any pattern of behavior or thinking that you start to repeat becomes a habit. Habits are just patterns. That's all that they are. And so I had a life experience because of one incident where I would wake up every single morning and feel like something was wrong and I couldn't put my finger on it. And the more that you wake up and think something's wrong, the more your brain is going to find reasons why something might be wrong. And so I developed this sort of chronic state of feeling on alert, feeling this sense that I got to be aware.
Fight or flight.
Yes, yes. My, in clinical terms, my sympathetic nervous system got switched on and I had no idea how to turn it off. And if you don't know how to calm your nervous system down, to flip off the sympathetic nervous system and flip on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your calm, grounded, resting nervous system, you will forever struggle with focus, with being present, with the ability to think clearly and make good decisions. You will constantly talk about the fact that you feel anxious, and that comes from your nervous system always being on edge and being in fight or flight. I didn't know any of this. I was just a nervous kid with a nervous stomach. Every camp that I went to, I got sent home because I was too homesick. Oh, yeah. I mean, you know how homesick you have to be for trained counselors to actually call your parents and go, we got a problem here. She can't stay here. Like, she is out of her mind.
When you say out of your mind, what are the physical symptoms or verbal symptoms of that?
Oh my gosh. Complete disassociation. So I would be at camp, like literally 6th grade camp. So at the end of 6th grade year, and I feel bad for little Mel Robbins. I feel bad for her because, here's this experience, 6th grade camp, where the entire school for 4 nights goes away to a camp, just the 6th grade. It's supposed to be the culmination of your 6th grade year. And I am so freaked out that something bad is going to happen, that I, of course, escalate things in my own mind. I don't even feel like I'm at camp. I feel like I'm walking on a movie set. I don't feel like I'm on Earth. I feel like I'm on a spaceship somewhere looking down all the time. I feel like I might throw up because my stomach is rattled, because when you're anxious and you can't focus your thoughts, you tend to not eat. And so that, of course, upsets your stomach. It's not that something bad's going to happen. It's that you're screwing up the chemistry in your stomach by not eating because you're so nervous, which only makes it worse. And as your mind is scrambling, thinking something bad is going to happen, and then your stomach is hurting, then you start to think, oh my God, I'm going to throw up. And then you start to think, well, if I throw up, something bad's going to happen. And then the kids are going to laugh. And like, it just becomes this spiral train wreck. And that is the state that I lived in. And so, you learn how to cope. It becomes your new normal. But that was basically my life, constantly feeling like something bad was going to happen, constantly feeling like I wasn't really present, constantly lying or fibbing about how I felt or what I was thinking because I didn't want people to judge me. I mean, it's awful.
And then you come through college and you've got to make that choice in life as to which direction you're going to go in. It seems quite...
Choice. I love the choice, yeah.
Yeah, well, how would you define it?
Panic.
Panic, yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Because I had only ever lived in survival mode.
So did you not take a pause to decide to sort of listen
Take a pause?
Who you were and what your calling was? And
Take a pause. When you have anxiety, your whole mode of living is, if I'm on the move, no one can catch me. If I am on the run, I'm safe. And so what's interesting is that I think the only time in my life that I have actually slowed down was during the pandemic. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. You had no choice.
Yeah. And one of the hardest things, which became one of the greatest realizations, is truly coming face to face with myself and realizing that even though I have done all this work to heal trauma, even though I have done extraordinary things in terms of my own thinking patterns, that there was a level to which I was still on the run. that I was darting off to a coffee shop or darting off to Target or darting off to an airplane. And all of this racing around kept me from having to truly stop and stand with the woman in the mirror and just be still and figure out, well, what do I really want? How do I really want to feel?
You talk about the topic of distraction and procrastination, and it's rarely in this context, but it sounds like a form of distraction, distracting yourself from taking a moment to confront thyself and to really ask some of those questions, which I guess if you're in a fight or survival state, the answers to some of those questions might be maybe illuminating to a vulnerable, to an extent which will make you feel vulnerable and unsafe, because those are pretty like existential questions to ask yourself, to look at yourself and say, who am I and what do I want? And, how do I get it? It's much easier, as you say, just to be swept by the tide. Mm-hmm. And that's a form of short-term defense. It feels like a short-termist, we'll just get to tomorrow,
Yeah.
And some people go through their lives doing that, right?
Oh, I was.
Yeah.
I was. I think that there's also sort of layers of healing on issues. And so, when I remembered the sort of initial incident and I started to kind of string together, holy cow, like all of this is connected.
A lot of the stories, there's like the common thread where we hear about your husband and that relationship. And I feel like so much of our community are women that are very growth focused, and they oftentimes struggle with anxiety, but they really struggle with like this burning desire to want more from life. And sometimes it does transmute into like a focus or an anger on their relationship. So for your relationship and your marriage, like what has that trajectory been like, and how have you healed that? So now it's in support of your dreams, but rather than like being a place where you're projecting.
Yeah, it's a fabulous question. So in context, I've been married for 25 years. We literally celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary like 3 weeks ago. And it's been up and down. And one of the gifts of my marriage is that Chris and I have found ourselves at different times in very different roles in our marriage. And so we have been at times where we were without kids and we were both working and we were making about the same amount of money. And then we got into a mode where we had kids, and our kids are now 22, 21, and 16 years old, where he was the lead. Mm-hmm. And I was sort of the more traditional, I have a job, but your money's our money, my money's my play money kind of situation. Mm-hmm. And then we got into a point, which was 12 years ago, where my husband wanted to pursue a dream of going into the restaurant business. It had always been his dream. Now, look, I grew up working in restaurants, and I think one thing that will cure you of wanting to own one is working in
Yeah, that's true. That's so true.
So I'm like, okay, let's see how this goes. And he and his best friend, to their credit, they wrote a business plan. They raised a little bit of money. They quit their corporate jobs. They opened a little pizza joint outside of Boston, Massachusetts. The first one was a home run. And so like complete fucking idiots, we cashed everything out. 401ks, the 529 plans for the kids. We then took out a home equity line because that's free money. We leveraged credit cards. We shoved it all in to expand the restaurant business. And then 2008 hit. Wow. The housing crisis hit the United States. We found ourselves like everybody else upside down. The liens hit the house, $800,000 in debt, maxed out home equity line, maxed out credit cards. I never, ever thought that at the age of 41, with 3 kids under the age of 10, I would not be able to buy groceries. Mm-hmm. Friends and family had invested, and the restaurants were still open, and they were doing everything that they could to try to make it work. And I didn't want anybody to know. And this was absolutely the rock bottom moment of my life. I was drinking myself into the ground. I would wake up every single morning. I became a person I didn't recognize. Mm-hmm. I would literally hit that snooze button 4 times because I could not face the day. My kids would miss the bus every morning. I was that harried mom that was racing to school, kind of throwing them out of the car, forgot the lunches, forgot the forms. That was the beginning of the day. Hiding from my friends, pissed off at my husband. I would start drinking at, 3:00 in the afternoon to numb it all. I was unemployed. It was a fucking nightmare. And my problems felt so big that I just started circling the drain. Like, why bother? Like, I know how this ends. We lose the house. We get divorced. I hate you. It's your fault. Because the truth is, it's so much easier to be angry than it is to be afraid. And so here's the thing that I want to really focus on. You know what to do. We all do. Knowing what to do is the easy part. I knew it wasn't Chris's fault. It's not like he started the business to fail. I know the restaurant business is a bitch and most restaurants fail. I knew I needed a job. I knew I needed to talk to my friends. I knew I needed to stop drinking. I knew I needed to be nicer to him and stop. I knew I needed to exercise. Like, we all know what to do. It's the how. How do you make yourself do it when you feel scared or anxious or alone or beaten down or shame? Like, all of it. That was my struggle every day. And, I got out of that mess by sheer luck. And I think it was divine intervention because the story is so stupid. There's no other explanation. Literally, I was watching television one night. It was a Monday night outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And I was having a moment where I was having a pep talk with myself. I don't know if you've ever been that low where you're like, all right, that's it. Tomorrow morning, it's the new you, Mel Robbins. You've got to pull this shit together. You have got to look for a job. You've got to stop screaming at Chris. If you're going to drink, start at 8:00. Don't start at 3. Like literally.
You're like drunk.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm like, oh, totally.
Totally.
I have 4 Manhattans in at this point.
Like, no, we got this.
I got this. I got this woman. And then tomorrow morning,
No, literally, like tomorrow.
you are going to get your ass out of bed. You're not going to hit that snooze button.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, honest to goodness, this is what happened. A rocket ship launches across the television screen at the end of the commercial. And those 4 Manhattans gave me a crazy ass idea. I said, Mel, tomorrow morning, you are going to launch yourself out of bed like a rocket. You are going to move so fast, woman. You're not going to be in that bed when that anxiety hits. You are going to be on your way. Now, that was it. That was the moment. I always say you're one decision away from a totally different life. One decision away. The next morning, Tuesday morning, this is when everything changed. The alarm goes off. And then this is something I want everyone to understand. There's a 5-second window of hesitation where you start to think about what you need to do. And this 5-second window of hesitation defines your whole life. It determines how much money you make, how happy you are, how healthy you are, whether or not your relationship is amazing. It's a moment of hesitation that's a habit, where you start thinking about what you need to do. And I am here to give you the secret to all behavior change. If you move within that 5-second moment of hesitation, you beat your subconscious brain and you take control. And I didn't know this at the time. I mean, come on. I had invented this while I was drunk on Manhattans. I now know the science. But here's how it works. So that alarm went off, and this is how I would test this. Set your alarm 30 minutes earlier tomorrow morning, and do it 30 minutes earlier on purpose. Because when that alarm goes off, you're going to be pissed off and full of resistance. Just like when you stand in front of the mirror and you're about to high five yourself, you're going to feel resistance. The resistance to getting out of bed is the exact same resistance that you feel standing in front of the mirror. It's the exact same resistance you feel when you are speaking up at work, or when you're drawing a boundary, or when you're putting down the donut, or where you're pushing yourself away from your computer to go meditate. Resistance anywhere is the same as resistance everywhere. So if you can learn how to beat it in one area of your life, you can do it everywhere. So the alarm goes off. And you'll notice in that moment when an alarm goes off, this moment of hesitation starts where you consider whether or not you feel like getting out of bed. And for me, I'd start thinking, I don't want to. I don't give a shit that I thought, like, how's this going to help? It's cold. It's February. I don't want to. All you do in that moment when you feel the resistance kick in is count backwards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's it. Do not count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't work. You have to count backwards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Because when you start counting backwards, it requires focus. That shuts off the subconscious brain and awakens your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain you use when you take the SATs, when you're present, when you're acting with confidence and courage. It gives you immediate control. By the time you get to 1, you now have a fucking shot. Move. Move. That's how you change behavior. In habit research, it's called a starting ritual. It's a little brain hack. It's a form of metacognition that you can use as a tool to push yourself to do the things that scare you or that you're avoiding. Or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, pull yourself away from the rosé if you're trying to do Whole30. Pull yourself away, or 75 hard, which I, for some fucking reason, signed up for. I'm
What is
day
that?
7, which is why I'm so angry with it.
I know.
I'll tell you that in a minute.
Okay.
But here's the thing about the 5-second rule. I didn't know it then. But I went on to use it in secret for 3 years. I then was invited to give a talk where I blurted out at the end of the talk, because I have no idea how to end the talk. That talk that I'm talking about is a TEDx talk that now has 27 million views. If you watch it, you'll see me have a 21-minute long panic attack on the stage at the end of it was the first speech I'd ever given.
Wow.
I forget how to end it. It was about career change. It was not about the 5-second rule. I blurt out, oh, by the way, there's this thing I do. I call it the 5-second rule. You got to move within 5 seconds or your brain kills it. Thank you very much. I was so disassociated. The anxiety was so bad. I've got this massive neck rash. And I even give out my email address. Like, that's how out of it.
I'm obsessed with that.
Haven't cleaned up the inbox yet.
Yeah, no, still. And literally, a year goes by.
You gave out your email address.
And nothing happens. And then they put it online. And then another year goes by. I don't even know it's online. And it gains 1 million views and people start to write to me. And I'm like, oh, were you in San Francisco? And they're like, no, it's online. I'm like, it's online?
Wow.
That's how the 5-second rule got out, by mistake. So when I say this is like God, the universe, whatever you believe or don't believe in, is like, okay, this crazy woman is ballsy enough to stand on a stage and tell people if you count backwards from 5, it'll change your life, and actually mean it. And I do.
Mm-hmm.
Pediatricians around the world now use it to help kids interrupt the thoughts that cause anxiety. Veterans organizations are using it to help reframe programs associated with PTSD. We know of more than 111 people who have stopped an attempt at suicide by counting backwards and asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
This shit works. And I'm telling you that the obstacles that you're facing in your life are real. The shit that you've survived in your life, it's big and it's real. The trauma that you're still trying to heal is real. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and high-fiving yourself in the mirror will not change those things. It changes you. And that changes your ability to face those things, to take responsibility for what happens next, and to heal, and to go create a life that makes you happy.
Yeah, it's almost as if it suspends time for a moment. Even though you're counting and creating time, it's like it suspends the time so that you can be like, oh, I'm not that thought that I have, or I am not the trauma that I experienced. It really does create that very brief moment of just like, oh, like shining the light on it so it doesn't control you anymore.
And for people pleasing, like you were talking about, like you see somebody left you on red, or somebody's ghosting you, or you're like doing what we all do, rewriting the text, putting in an emoji to make sure that it's softened, and like, do they like me? You're like, okay, wait a minute, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What the fuck am I doing? Like, honestly,
Sure.
don't manage somebody's reaction. Manage your truth. Manage the tone in which you say it. And that's it. Like, if I have to choose between being liked and respected, I will choose being respected all day long.
Yeah.
And the number one person that you want to have respect you is you. When you stop acting authentically, when you start editing yourself or couching yourself or silencing yourself, you are no longer respecting yourself. So it goes back to the secret to all relationships. Your relationship with yourself is the foundation for every relationship you have. When you start to treat yourself with the respect and the celebration and the acknowledgement and the support that you need and you deserve, everything in your life changes because you change.
Well, now there's like a mad rush of young people looking to see if you will adopt them, because that's my first thought. My second thought was, okay, so when my daughter has anxiety, or my son has anxiety, my daughter more so will struggle with anxiety, and she's pretty open about it. There's a part of me that wants to fix it, and there's a part of me that's like, how can you have anxiety when I'm your mom and we talk about these things and I pump you up and you know you have. You don't need to do anything to be amazing. And so she just gets this incredible pep talk. Like, most people would die to, I mean, that's like prose basically to read that and to be so encouraged. And so many people, not only do they not get that encouragement from their own parents, they don't get it from anyone.
Right.
So to think that she's getting that and she's, her parents are together and she's had this incredible opportunity to have someone pour into her all of her life, yet she still struggles with anxiety.
Crippling.
And so as a parent, that's something I'm always wanting, like, I struggle with that. Like, is it something I've done? Is it the manic way that I live my life? Like, am I the person who's giving her, because I don't have anxiety, so am I giving her anxiety?
So I have no idea. Here's the most important thing. It doesn't matter what you think or what you're feeling. Mm-hmm. Because the anxiety is her felt experience.
That's right.
Right? And as parents, I think one of the most heartbreaking and frustrating things is that oftentimes you have somebody in your life that you love, a son, a daughter, a partner, and you see all the amazing things about them. And they don't see any of it. Mm-hmm. And so this is also one of the big things in the book that we write about how your own mind has a filter in it, this thing called the reticular activity system. And that the filter in your brain is very different than the filter in anybody else's brain. And it's constantly changing in real time based on what you think is important to it. So it's all chapters, I think 4 through 7, we go through all this and teach you how to change the filter. You've experienced this filter, by the way. Mm-hmm. So when you go to buy a new car, right now, everybody's seeing Broncos everywhere, right? The new Bronco is out.
Okay, now there's one. Now right. I will. I hadn't,
so
but now I will.
So when's the last time you bought a car?
In December.
Okay, and what happened once you decided what kind of car you were going to see?
I keep seeing that car everywhere.
Correct.
And when I see the same car in the same color, I try to run them off the road.
Yes, and so that's your brain changing the way it filters the world in real time because of what it thinks is important to you. So if I think, for example, that your daughter is beautiful, and your daughter thinks that she's the ugliest or the biggest of all her friends or whatever, it doesn't matter what I think.
Right.
It matters what she thinks. Mm-hmm. And when you tell yourself over and over that you're not good enough or you're a failure or you're this or you're that, your brain actually thinks it's important. I can give you an example. So my husband went into the restaurant business. It was a dream of his. And this is actually all part of the origin story of the 5-second rule. And he and his best friend launched these little pizza joints outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And it ends up not going great. And they work at it super, super hard for 7 years. And at the end of the business, they sold it for pennies on the dollar to the next investor. They left the business and they did not return the profit that they had hoped to return to their investors. Now, our best friend, Chris's business partner, was able to leave that business and go, entrepreneurship. I'm proud of myself. Sure. We worked so hard. And yeah, did we do what we set out? No, but you know what? I feel good about what I did. My husband couldn't do that. He left that business and said, that failed, I'm a failure.
Oh.
And
was that his first big entrepreneurial?
Yep,
okay.
Yep. And for 7 years, he would drag that into the bathroom every morning.
Oh.
And the human being he saw staring back at him in the mirror was a failure because of that thing. That's actually why most people have anxiety, or because because they resist the high five habit. Because they are dragging their entire past into the bathroom and saying, because of these things that have been done to me or these things that I did that I wish I could change, I now see a person who does not deserve a high five.
Yeah.
And so you withhold the thing that you need to forgive yourself, to love yourself.
The thing that you would give to anyone else.
That's also why people feel anxious.
Well, let's talk about that. Worry and anxiety, yes, the difference between the two.
You got
because I don't worry, and it's almost a problem. I feel, and I've talked about it before.
Why do you think you don't worry?
Well, I had my brain scanned, and Dr. Amen says I just don't have blood flow in that area. So part of it's genetic. Part of it is my faith.
Yep.
Part of it is the way I was raised. Like, you just roll with everything. So. Yeah. And my parents, I don't think were worriers, so I never learned the worry habit. I think that's part of it.
But then to your point, it's interesting. How did my daughter learn it? Right? If your daughter's struggling with it?
Yes.
I'm going to fan myself because I actually think I might be having a hot flash.
Oh, that's so fantastic because that's another thing we talk a lot about is
you just let
the change.
Know. Who cares?
I haven't had any hot flashes yet.
What?
I shouldn't even. I probably just jinxed myself.
Yes.
I don't know. My mom didn't have a lot of hot flashes either.
It happens more and more.
So I don't worry. I don't worry.
All right, so let me tell you the difference. So worrying is nothing more than worrying is always about the future, by the way. It's never about the present moment.
True.
And so worrying is when your thoughts start to sound an alarm about what's going to happen.
Okay.
So it's the what if this, what if that, what if the other thing, what if loop that you can get trapped into. Anxiety is when your body state changes.
So worry is all the things that are happening in your head.
Yeah.
Oh, and anxiety you feel.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That helps me.
Yes.
Okay. So, and you're still having the thoughts too.
Correct.
Okay.
But a lot of times what will happen is that your body state can get so agitated that you even stop being present to what you're worried about, because now your mind goes, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I feel like my heart is racing. And you start to obsess over the physiology of your body. And I'm going to explain kind of even more about this.
Super helpful.
Panic is now the big brother of all of this. So worry's a little baby. Then we got the middle schooler, which is feeling it in your body. And then you got the big, teenager of a panic attack, which is when the body state gets so scared and upset that now your brain has an emergency system that says, we're going to get you out of here. So if you've ever been around somebody who panics, they're not rational.
No.
They're immediately like, I need to get out of the room.
I'm going to die.
I'm going to die. Like they go into a mode of get me out of here as a way to rescue themselves from a body that's now sounding a 5 alarm kind of fire. So there are 2 ways that anxiety can come on, this anxiety thing in your body. You can either start with your mind and all the what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happened? It can happen as you're scrolling through social media and you start to see that your friends all went out and they didn't invite you. Thanks a lot. Or you see the person that's, exercising and you start going, but I didn't exercise. And you start thinking, it's never going to work out for me. Or you see all the couples and then you start thinking, what if I never meet anybody? So it can start with the thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And then your body starts to go, uh-oh. And your stomach gets tense and your armpits sweat and your heart starts to race. And that's how it ramps up. Or if you have trauma stored in your body from anything in your childhood or anything in your past, there will be times that you feel a surge of anxiety come on and you don't know why.
So there is no precursor. There's no, you're saying for certain people or in certain situations, you might just be washing the dishes and suddenly you have anxiety come on.
Correct.
And so I want, and again, I'm asking these questions because I haven't felt
response,
it. Yeah.
If it's a trauma response, it's because your nervous system just remembered something from your past. So I'll give you
subconsciously?
I'll give you a really, really common example that we've found in all the research that we've done and the people that we've coached. A lot of people get very on edge as the sun goes down. And the reason why is because if you grew up in a chaotic or abusive household, that's when people were coming home from work.
Yeah.
That's when the drinking began.
Or you came home from school.
Correct. If you hear tires on a gravel road, if you hear a beer can crack open, if you smell a certain cologne, those can be things that set you on edge. Sure. And that's not even something you're consciously aware of. It's your body remembering something. And your body's now trying to help you by going, pay attention, this is that thing, But then you're standing there washing your dishes, you feel this thing happen, and you're like, why am I feeling nervous? Why is my son? And then your thoughts go. This is how it escalates. So
can I ask somebody who feels anxiety all the time?
That's generalized anxiety, and that's what that's,
and is that a physical feeling that you feel all the time?
What that is there's an entire chapter around this book that'll change your life. I think it's chapter 7. It's called High Fiving Your Heart. So when you're on edge all the time, let me teach you about your nervous system.
Yes.
Because I think everybody on the planet right now, having come out of the last 18 months, everybody is right now in a state of fight or flight. Everybody's nervous system is fried and on edge. Everybody is prone to being triggered because you have just gone through a level of sustained uncertainty that no human nervous system can manage.
Yeah.
So here's what everybody needs to know. You have 2 nervous systems, okay? You have something called the sympathetic nervous system, which is basically fight or flight.
Right.
This is your anxiety state. This is being on edge. This is feeling like the next shoe is going to drop. This is what psychologists call being dysregulated, okay? The second nervous system that you have is called the parasympathetic nervous system. And that is your calm, cool, grounded, resting nervous system. That's how we want you to go through your day.
Yeah.
Because when you are grounded in your body and you feel comfortable in your own skin, first of all, your prefrontal cortex can work. Secondly, you won't be as easily triggered. Third, you'll feel more optimistic and focused. And so I want to teach you a simple trick using science to switch off this on-edge nervous system and switch on the really positive one. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to use something called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a treasure, as you know, in your body. And it runs from your rear end all the way up to the top of your head, through every organ, through your vocal cords. All you're going to do is take your hands, put them right here in the center of your chest. You're going to press down. You're going to take a deep breath. And then you're going to say these 3 sentences. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm loved.
I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm loved.
Yeah. What did you feel when you did that?
I believe those things. I feel good.
Yeah.
I feel calmer.
Yeah.
So I suppose that brings you into that state?
Yes. And pressing here actually tones the vagus nerve, which is an on-off button between the on-edge and the calm and cool. It's like a treasure. And so here's a couple things I want you to know. There are some mornings you might wake up and you need to do it 53 times. There are days you might stand in the grocery store and somebody cuts you off with their cart and it just sends you reeling. Hands on heart. Give your heart a high five. Pull yourself back into your body. Switch off that stress response. Switch on your grounded, calm, in control response.
Do you recommend people do that? I mean, is there a
Every
way
morning.
to put the brake on if you're someone who can pretty easily slip into a panic attack?
Yes. So this is something you want to start to do immediately. And I recommend you do it right after you get out of bed. Because I would like for you, before you get into the bathroom mirror, I would like for you to be present and on edge. And I would like for you to be grounded in your body when you start your day. It's an incredible gift that you can give yourself because you'll feel more in control and centered and present. And then when you step in front of that mirror, you will actually be able to be with yourself and to understand, okay, what do I need from myself today?
Yeah.
And it completely changes that moment. The other reason why this is important is because if your nervous system is on edge, and that's your default, yes, you're going to be way more prone to a panic attack because you are already idling at such a stressed out level, and all the chemical releases from the cortisol and everything else that's flooding your body. We need to get you back into a more neutral and grounded state. So that'll help for sure. And so it's important to understand, are my worries starting in my head or are they actually a felt experience in my body? Because then depending upon which or both it is, you can use 2 totally different strategies. First of all, this high-fiving your heart absolutely will work for trauma. It does not get rid of it. It helps you manage and live with it. I would recommend EMDR. I would also recommend...
We're big fans of EMDR.
Yeah, and the guided psychedelic modalities are incredible. I've done those for childhood trauma, and they've been unbelievable.
Amazing.
And so those sorts of things really help you heal trauma. This will help you control it, live with it, not be afraid of it, in terms of being able to settle your nervous system.
You've experienced anxiety, you said, all your life.
Yeah.
So I have a couple questions around that. Number one, controlling it, managing it. What are your thoughts and your experiences with medication, SSRIs?
Oh, great question. So I took Zoloft from the age of 22 until probably 44.
Okay.
It was life-changing. It was
Life-saving or life-changing or both?
both. It was the latter I needed to get out of a hole because when I finally got diagnosed with anxiety, I have a very interesting story because I fall into the group of women, and I know you do too, that were completely a part of what they call the lost generation.
Yeah.
So when they came out, as you know, with the ADHD and ADD diagnosis back in the 70s.
Just a boy thing.
Just a boy thing, yeah. And the symptoms for women present completely differently. And when you don't treat ADHD, you tend to get anxiety.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge group of women our age that were treated and medicated for anxiety in their late teens and early 20s when the actual issue was ADD.
It's still happening today.
Oh, of course it is. Yes. It's actually one of these things I'm super passionate about getting out into the world.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I discovered the 5-second rule and I started to do the part that you can do to interrupt the worry loop, which when you can cut the anxiety off at its knees by cutting off the worry cycle, you stop the escalation in your body.
Okay.
And so I can teach you guys how to do that. It's super simple. It's
Let's do it.
super
Let's do
effective.
it. Yeah.
There's one other thing I want to teach you about anxiety, though, that also is incredibly empowering because it makes so much sense. So anxiety has a purpose. Really important one, actually. Anxiety and that anxiety response in your body gets you to pay attention.
Yeah.
If you go into a state of being hyper alert before a test, you'll do better if you're not worried.
Absolutely.
Same with performance. Same with sports. Like it's really, and also it alerts you to danger. So for example, if you and I were driving after this interview to go get a cup of coffee and somebody suddenly swerves in front of us.
Yes.
And we whip the car.
Yes.
What are you going to feel in your body?
Feels like butterflies. I'll shake.
Yep.
Sweat maybe.
Yep.
A little bit of panic.
Yep.
And your muscles tense up.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. So you just had a panic attack in the car.
Oh.
But the reason why it wasn't scary is because intellectually it made sense.
It made sense. Yeah, like of course I almost died.
Yeah, the swerving was your brain taking over to get you out of there. That's a panic attack, basically.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
In a way that's healthy.
Yeah.
And then when
serves us.
Yeah, when the car pulls away, what happens in your body?
You start to like it stays for a minute, you know, but then you start to go like, okay, I'm safe.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
What happens for people that struggle with anxiety is they have that response and it doesn't make any sense because they don't understand it. So it escalates because they get afraid of it. And once you're afraid of anxiety coming on, then you actually make it last longer because you're resisting the up and down of it. And so there's two things that you can do. First, what I want you to do is I want you to write down, well, actually, first what you do is for a week, anytime you catch yourself time traveling ahead or worrying, use the 5-second rule and interrupt it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just say, I'm not thinking about that. Mm-hmm. You want to build a muscle of catching yourself hanging out in the worry loop.
Oh, catch yourself when you're hanging out there. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking about your roommate situation this fall, and it's not even this fall yet. You're worried about what classes you're going to get. You're worried about whether or not you're going to lose the weight before the reunion. You're worried about whether or not anyone's going to hire you because you've been home staying. Like you're like sitting here just in the doom loop, right?
I do this with my daughter, and so I'm curious if you can give me some advice from someone who has it, because again, I don't know her experience, but we will get into this dialogue. We just did it last night. She's planning her wedding and she's launching a beauty brand. And so she was going through like all of the what ifs thoughts in her head. And she was like, I'm so anxious. And so I'm dismissing each one of her what ifs and what ifs. And I just keep dismissing it and dismissing it and dismissing it. And then I'm like the toxic positivity mother, like, so you're not worried, okay? Good night. I'm going to bed, but you're not worried and you're not anxious.
Well, so when somebody who's anxious brings their problems to people, people are like, well, because here's the thing. I did this for years.
Okay.
And my kids' anxiety just escalated.
Okay.
So there are two mistakes all parents make.
I'm taking notes.
All parents make these two mistakes, including yours truly. I mean, I caused my kids years of therapy because of these mistakes. And myself, of course, for blaming myself for making these mistakes. Number one is invalidating the worry.
Okay.
We think we're helping our kids by going, let me tell you all the reasons why you don't need to worry about that.
Okay.
What actually happens is you shove your kid further into the corner because they don't feel seen or heard.
Ooh. Okay.
This will change your life as a parenting method.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
This is all you say. Would you like me to give you advice, or do you just need me to listen?
Okay. Okay. I can do that.
95% of the time, my kids say, I just need you to listen.
Okay.
They're getting it out of their head by coming to you.
Yeah.
And I have the same dynamic with one of my daughters where she comes to me and I've become her blankie emotionally.
Sure.
And then I immediately try to go, but that's not an issue and that's not an issue. And that's good that you have that fight with that friend because she's a jerk anyway.
Yeah.
And she just is coming to be heard. That's it. And I keep the anxiety around because she's not resolving it in a healthy way because I'm fighting with her about whether or not it's actually legitimate to feel this way. So I'm also making her feel less than for having these worries.
I trust you. I trust you when you say this. But there's a part of me that feels like, but she doesn't see the, like, you know, if she's struggling with this,
not
I just have to
your-
explain to her
No, but it's
that
not,
this is how it
but
will
here's
work.
the thing. Here's the second mistake. We think it's our job as parents to fix the things they're worried about.
Absolutely. It feels like an obligation. You're only as happy as your least happy child, they say.
But here's the thing. When you step in to fix it,
yeah.
you are telling your child, I don't think you can.
Right. Absolutely.
Or I don't think you can face this.
You don't have what it takes. Let me do it for you.
Yes. And I made this mistake for years. I was creating a learned helplessness in my kids. I was entrenched in this toxic pattern of my daughter coming to me with her concerns and worries, which were very, very valid, and me trying to fix them because I was worried. But all she felt was, Mom doesn't hear me. And this is actually a big deal. And she thinks that simple solution is going to fix it. And the truth is, the simple solution always fixes it. But she's not coming to you about the stuff she's talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
She's actually expressing that deeper emotion of this hurts, or I'm scared, or I don't feel good enough. And when we stay up here, like, let's get rid of this and let's take care of that and don't think about it this way, we're just trying to help. We just love them.
Yeah.
The deeper thing, the deeper wound that they keep having trigger this anxiety, it doesn't actually get addressed. And so when you listen and just listen and listen, anything else, great. Is there anything you need from me? Because then what happens is you're teaching them how to think strategically, make requests, and ask for the help that they need.
Yeah.
This all comes back to, by the way, this high five habit in the mirror. Because if you can't stand in the mirror and see a human being that's trying, that's struggling, that's anxious, that feels insecure, and still go, I hear all that and I got you, and we're going to get through it. You're going to constantly be seeking that assurance in everybody else about the surface level things in your life. When the real issue is something much deeper. And when you start to connect with yourself at a deeper level every single morning and see a human being and celebrate them, no matter where they are, even if the wedding stuff is falling apart, or the bridesmaids are complaining with each other, and I don't even know the stuff, or you're just worried you're not going to fit into the dress, or you're worried about where people are going to sit at the tables, or you're worried about who's going to show up,
all
or
the
you're worried
things.
about, like, all the things. You can stand with yourself with all those things going on and still love and support and celebrate yourself, and know that no matter what happens, whether the seating arrangement gets right or not, or that you got your own back.
Yeah.
You're going to see yourself through it.
I love that you're a fan of therapy. You talk about it. And also finding out the right medication, maybe even, like you said, knowing if you have the right diagnosis. Like, that's huge because
it's so liberating.
Once you like really truly understand your brain, which, we can probably spend a whole nother hour talking about that. It just doesn't make sense that right now the standard of care is we ask a couple of questions. We don't look at the organ, and then we decide what's going on with you. Are you a fan of therapy for kids, and at what age? And
any age you need it. I'm a fan of talking about everything.
Yeah. Did you send your kids to therapy?
When they needed it, absolutely. When our kids, when our son started sleeping on the floor.
At what age?
At the age of 8. And it went from one night.
His bedroom or on the floor in your room?
Ours.
Okay.
And it went from one night to 3 months. We got a therapist, all right.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to learn, I'm really screwing this up because by letting him stay on the floor, I'm actually communicating, you're right. You're not strong enough to sleep through the night.
So this brought up an email I got from a mom this week who said she ended up with a daughter who ended up being very suicidal, extreme bullying, etc.
Yeah.
And she kept telling her, like, it's going to make you tougher. This is how girls are. Like, you're going to be okay. I went through this in middle school too, all those things. And she said, the one thing I regret not doing was taking it serious enough.
Die by suicide?
No.
Oh,
Daughter's
okay.
alive.
When you said regret, I was like,
her regret was that she didn't transfer her to another school and realize it was. So, when I think about, like, okay, you can fix it yourself. I believe in you. I trust you. How do we find that balance?
Well, I think in extreme situations like that, you got to listen to your kid and the experts.
Yeah.
Like, if your kid is crying that much for help and is suicidal, get them out of the environment they're in.
Yeah.
Period. If you have a kid that's got chronic anxiety and they're starting to opt out of life, you need support in supporting them in
inching toward the things that are scaring them, because it's only through facing the things that are scaring them. And that doesn't mean striding into a school where you're getting bullied to the point of wanting to die by suicide.
Yeah.
But if you're afraid to go out, they're afraid to go out of the house, or afraid to invite somebody over, or afraid to...
Which is really common right now in this age group, like 13 to 19.
I think it's also common coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it probably has a lot to do with that. They're afraid to drive their cars. They're afraid to go off of social media.
See,
yet
I
they
think
hate
that
being
this,
on
by
it.
the way, is a lot of our overparenting.
Ah.
I think that we have so bubble wrapped our kids because we don't want them. It hurts when your kid is in pain, that we don't force them to do things that are a struggle. And I've certainly succumbed to this. After a long day of work, do I want to fight with my kid about whether or not they should have their phone in the room? No.
Right. That's
Should I
honest.
have done that sooner? Of course. Because what I didn't realize about our kids and their phones is that part of the problem with phones in their bedrooms after a certain hour is they feel obligated
Yes.
to be available to their friends.
And to know what's going on with everyone everywhere.
Yep. And so there is a psychology driver that is more powerful than they are. And as parents, it's important to kind of know when to draw the line and when not, even though it hurts, even though they're going to hate you. Look at the same stuff our parents said to us, but I think it's more complicated with technology. It really is, because they're on their laptops for school. And they're on their phones doing FaceTime in study groups. And they're on their phones in FaceTime playing video games. And that's how a lot
They
of
were
them socialize.
on their phones and on their devices, and they were forced to be so,
Right.
like first graders all the way through the pandemic.
Well, I remember being on the phone upstairs talking to my best friend, Jody Bricken, in secret at 11 o'clock
with
at night.
one of the cords that
Yeah,
went
and
like
all
that.
of a sudden, mortified because my father picks up and is like, all right, you two, I can hear you. Hang up the phone. You're like, oh my God, okay, hang up the phone. I got to go, Jody. We're way up past our bedtime.
Yeah.
And we are not doing that with our kids
Right.
because they have a whole world in their hand. And so I do think one really important thing that we put in place way too late was a basket in the kitchen with a charging station. And after a certain time, our kids had to have it in the basket.
I love that tip.
And that's where my phone goes in my bathroom at night. That's where I charge it, even in a hotel, no matter where I am, because I can't be trusted.
Yeah.
I'm going to grab it and look at it.
Yeah. Well, talking about the high five habit, I was in preparation for our time together today, I was thinking about how that's like one of the first things you teach kids. Like if you notice, like little kids, they learn to wave goodbye and they go high five, and so why not teach them this habit and to give it to themselves too. And so that's what I love about the book. It's so helpful for people any age. You're not saying like this is going to fix somebody who's has some deeper issues to deal with, but it's a good strategy.
Tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. So a really important story that I think, actually there's two. One is in the book and one happened yesterday.
Okay.
So a woman who was in a domestic violence shelter, massive childhood trauma, just escaped a very abusive relationship. She's lost everything. Mm-hmm. And she wrote to us from a domestic violence shelter and said that what the high five habit has taught her after 5 days is that she knows that she has a lifetime of healing ahead of her. She knows she has a tremendous amount of work to do. But now she knows that she can have her own back. And that's like one of those moments where when that clicks inside somebody, now it's not going to change the reality of what she's facing. It's not going to change the very real obstacles that she has from a psychological and economic, everything perspective.
But it was the moment.
Her,
yeah,
and her ability to rise up and to face these things. Mm-hmm. And the second one was yesterday. So this circulated in an email to our team this morning because I like to see from our audience what's the impact of what we're doing. And so we circulate an email every morning with screenshots of comments or emails or stuff of what people are saying. And there was a woman that said, now keep in mind, the High Five Habit book is not even out yet. Mm-hmm. I've only just shared it on social media. Can't even really get into the deep science, which we only scratched at the surface on in our conversation. Mm-hmm. She said that she was at an AA meeting and somebody stood up in the AA meeting and shared the High Five Habit.
You're kidding.
No, and said to everybody, you have got to get on the bandwagon with this. Because we all need to wake up every day and see a human being who is trying.
Wow.
and who needs encouragement and support.
Wow.
And to think that a simple idea backed by science is already going viral and helping people not only help themselves, but help other people by sharing it.
Yeah.
It is the most just magical and exquisite thing in the world.
And it's got to feel amazing.
It does. I think it's very timely that I'm talking to you and doing this interview. There is so much about your work, your story, the work that you're putting out now that is what I need to hear. And so, I'm sitting here in a home that we were building in southern Vermont. And about 2.5 years ago, I had a cracking, if you will. I think that's the word that you use too, where I'm like, I can't keep going like this. I've got to make some changes. I can't continue to be a workaholic. I cannot be racing all over the place. Like, I have got to make some changes. And so now I am sitting here in my new home that is still under construction. And we've just sold our home of 24 years outside of Boston. And I, for the first time in 23 years, am experiencing such devastating anxiety about all the changes that I've put in place that I've literally spent the last 2 weeks completely disassociated. And I went back on medication. And I'm having this experience where it's almost like I'm on a really bad drug trip, and I know that it's going to end and that the feelings are going to level out. And yet I want the feelings to stop.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm so proud of you for getting back on the meds. There's a time and season.
Yes, that's true.
And as trauma survivors, we get activated when big change happens.
I hadn't even thought about the fact that it has a link to all the trauma I've been working on.
That is the whole thing.
And that's why your book, Happy Days, was just like, holy cow. I mean, this just landed right in my lap at the right time. Because why don't you tell the story about how, because I found the introduction of the book really interesting, about how this actually started in 2016.
Yeah. Well, it's not dissimilar to what you're referencing. And I'll begin by saying that, actually, let me first just speak back to you, and then I'm going to share that story. So I want to send a lot of compassion and gratitude to the dissociated part, because that part of you has done a really good job just getting by each day. Gratitude to the anxious part, love and compassion to the anxious part for revealing that you need a little extra support right now as you do deeper work. Okay. And just hold you there, because when we've been there and then we come back, it's like there's shame around that. There's so much terror around that, but it's a beautiful witnessing to see that these parts of you are coming up to give you information. And I just want to honor you for that. Self is qualities of curiosity. And so there's 3 questions you can start to ask yourself in the moment when the anxiety comes up. Instead of pushing the anxiety down, you can befriend it. And you can ask 3 questions. You can say, okay, what do I notice about the anxiety? So where does it live in my body? Would you want to do it with me right now?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Are you connected to the anxiety in this moment?
Not in this moment, but
is there something else?
Familiar with it, so I'm more.
Well, is there anything else that might be up right now that's a protector part that you're like, I want to kind of talk to?
It's interesting now that we're talking about it. I feel a little anxious.
Okay. So
I'm so programmed to run that staying still, which is what this new house in southern Vermont represents, this real quiet place, I feel tingly all over right now.
Okay. So there's a tingly, a desire to run, and then like this little anxiety kind of right back in the background.
Completely.
Okay, cool. Could we ask the tingliness and the desire to run to maybe just go in go out on the patio and have a coffee or have a cup of tea and just take a minute just to give us a little space to talk to the anxiety? Would that be okay with them?
Sure.
Okay. So just taking a moment to check in. You can close your eyes if you want, you can breathe, whatever you need, but just check in gently with the anxiety and ask, where is it in the body?
It's right here.
Right in your chest.
Yeah, like gripping like that.
Gripping. Any other ways you would define it? Colors, shapes?
It's like kind of hands like this. And I'm also really warm under my armpits, but I'm not sure if that's menopause shit happening or what. But
okay.
This, and then right here.
Tight, warm.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have an age or a gender?
Oh, female and older.
Older. Okay.
Yeah.
Like older than you are now?
Yeah, I think.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't think of myself as 50s, but.
No, but is it like when you say older, like 80s or like older?
I feel like these like witch hands. It's really fucking
witchy.
weird. Yeah.
Witchy. Okay, cool. Witchy. Anything else that you notice about it?
As I talk about it, it sort of like pulls back a little.
Okay. What do you know about it?
It's familiar.
Does it have any stories or visuals that attach to it?
More like the first words that came to mind is, I don't like this. I don't want to be here.
Okay, that's the part that's coming in that's saying, I don't like this, I don't want to be there, is another part. It's a protector. Would that protector feel safe enough to go have some tea for a moment?
Yeah. I'll send that protector outside the office.
Yeah. And I want to thank that protector and just let that protector know that I've totally got you and I'm not going to take anxiety to anywhere that they don't need to go. Really high level right here. We're not going to go anywhere we shouldn't go today. Okay. I just want to thank that protector for coming in and just say, have a tea, but thank you so much for speaking up. Thank you. So with a little bit more permission just to talk to this part, what is the anxious part need?
The first thing that came up was a hug, reassurance, that I don't have to do this on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. Does that part of you know that you are here? That yourself, that your resourced, undamaged self, does it know that you're here?
I think so. And the reason why I say it like that is because I think one of the things that I've been struggling with for so long because of workaholism and being busy and on the move as kind of my go-to protector. As long as I'm on the move, I'm going to be okay. As long as I'm busy. I have had a deep feeling of loneliness.
Yeah. So
being in a quiet place up here makes me feel really lonely.
Okay. Thank you for saying that. How do you feel towards the part?
I feel sad towards her, tired of feeling lonely. I get it. It's painful.
So she knows you're here and you have some compassion for her. So I don't want to put the words in your mouth. But
yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. if she wasn't in such an extreme role of doing, and anxious,
Yeah.
what else would she be doing?
She'd be hanging out with her friends.
Hanging out with her friends. Okay.
Laughing a lot. She'd be doing fun shit. I don't know. Going for a hike.
Going for a hike. Okay. Would you be there? Self?
Yeah.
Okay. In your own mind's eye, can you just take a moment to just visualize taking her by the hand and or however it visualizes for you, however it comes to your vision, taking her on that hike, see who's around, see whatever comes up. You can tell me whatever comes up, whatever you want to share.
I can totally see it. Totally. There's a black bear that is out with her cubs up there. And so I just see us walking down the path and there's the black bear.
How does she feel with you on the hike?
Happy that I'm there.
Yeah. And is there anything that you want to say to her on this hike?
I'm not going anywhere.
Can you make a commitment to her right now that when you notice her, you can just take her by the hand and go on the hike and remind her that you're not going anywhere?
Is when you say notice her, are you talking about when that feeling comes back? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. When the anxiety starts to come in, can you just let her know?
I am not going to let you be there alone.
Right. And make a commitment, maybe that you'll just take her on that hike. Maybe even literally go for a hike with her.
Totally.
Beautiful. How does she feel now? Just to close it out, how does she feel?
I think some of the protectors have come back in.
Okay. That's okay. They're welcome back. They're welcome back, Mel, because
they're like, no, I don't want to go on a hike. You know, like
that's okay. That's okay. They're welcome back. I want to thank them for stepping aside for the time that they did. They did a beautiful job. They are welcome back. We can always ask them to step aside when there's some space, but right now it's okay. They can come back. You now have what you have right now, Mel, is direct access from self to the part. It's so beautiful to witness. You have direct access from your adult resourced internal parent self to the part of you that's so protective and anxious. And you've given her a full media alert that you are available to her when she needs you.
Yeah.
Major step forward.
What are the steps? Like, how do you begin? Like, I think a lot of people can relate to the cracking because as you were telling the story of 2016, like, I can't, for me, I have been saying for 2 years, I can't handle one more thing. Like, I can't keep operating like this. I can't. So how does somebody recognize, number one, that there is that cracking? And number two, what is the next best couple things just to get started? Because obviously it's a long, slow, deep healing journey.
It is. It's a long, slow, deep healing journey. But what one of my readers said to me today in an interview, she said, I feel like Happy Days will take 5 to 10 years off of your therapy because with the direction and the awareness and the understanding, it actually just fast forwards things for people because it takes away all of the time that you need to figure it out. And then you can go deeper. But first steps for how do you know you're cracking into something? And this doesn't necessarily mean that you are remembering something that you dissociated from, but that you're accepting something that you've been running from. One is to accept that we're all running. Two, it's to start to notice some of the behavioral patterns, triggers, and the ways that you respond to them. So at first we can kind of begin to take an inventory of like the responses, right? The extreme ways that we react. So are you turning to drugs and alcohol? Are you overworking? Are you burning yourself out? Are you feeling extreme gastrointestinal issues? Are you having insomnia? Are you having a lot of physical conditions that you can't get a diagnosis for? Are you having extreme anxiety? Are you struggling to, not rage out of nowhere.
Well, one of your theses that I love, because it's very hopeful and it's true, is that there is you talk about the self with the capital S, and that there is a returning to that is desired by all of us. And in many ways, for me, this book felt not as much about trauma as it did about spirituality, because you can list all those negative things, but the flip side of this is that there is this, as you say, calm, confident, that there is a person in a self energy inside of you that you're trying to get back to. Yeah. And the cracking is a moment when you realize that all this running that you've been doing away from that calm, compassionate, confident self is no longer working.
Yeah. In many ways, the cracking is a great sign, because
it doesn't feel like it.
It definitely doesn't feel like it, but it's a great sign. Much as my therapist said, I said, why did I remember this now? I was 36 years old. And by the way, statistics show that most people don't remember their dissociated trauma until their 50s.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
I think the stat was like 80% or something crazy, my therapist told me. So when we're cracking, what's happening is, in my therapist's case, she said, you were safe enough to remember. You had gotten yourself to enough safety to remember. So I want to once again applaud you, because all the work that you've done on yourself, decades of devotional work that you've done for yourself and shared with the world, has gotten you to a place where you're safe enough now to crack into more. And it's fucking terrifying. But the best advice I could give anyone right out of the bat is to start to connect to that self energy. So how? So self is there. Self is ready to go. It's this totally loyal parent that's just ready to pick you up and the second that you ask for help. Self is qualities of curiosity. And so there's 3 questions you can start to ask yourself in the moment when the anxiety comes up. Instead of pushing the anxiety down, you can befriend it. And you can ask 3 questions. You can say, okay, what do I notice about the anxiety? So where does it live in my body? Would you want to do it with me right now?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Are you connected to the anxiety in this moment?
Not in this moment, but
is there something else?
I'm familiar with it, so I'm more.
Well, is there anything else that might be up right now that's a protector part that you're like, I want to kind of talk to?
It's interesting now that we're talking about it. I feel a little anxious.
Okay. So
I'm so programmed to run that staying still, which is what this new house in southern Vermont represents, this real quiet place, I feel tingly all over right now.
Okay. So there's a tingly, a desire to run, and then like this little anxiety kind of right back in the background.
Completely.
Okay, cool. Could we ask the tingliness and the desire to run to maybe just go in go out on the patio and have a coffee or have a cup of tea and just take a minute just to give us a little space to talk to the anxiety? Would that be okay with them?
Sure.
Okay. So just taking a moment to check in. You can close your eyes if you want, you can breathe, whatever you need, but just check in gently with the anxiety and ask, where is it in the body?
Right here.
Right in your chest.
Yeah, like gripping like that.
Gripping. Any other ways you would define it? Colors, shapes?
It's like kind of hands like this. And I'm also really warm under my armpits, but I'm not sure if that's menopause shit happening or what. But
okay.
This, and then right here.
Tight, warm.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have an age or a gender?
Oh, female and older.
Older. Okay.
Yeah.
Like older than you are now?
Yeah, I think. I don't know. I don't think of myself as 50s, but
No, but is it like when you say older, like 80s or like older,
I
like
just feel like these like witch hands. It's really fucking
witchy?
weird. Yeah.
Witchy. Okay, cool. Witchy. Anything else that you notice about it?
As I talk about it, it sort of like pulls back a little.
Okay. What do you know about it?
It's familiar.
Does it have any stories or visuals that attach to it?
More like the first words that came to mind is, I don't like this. I don't want to be here.
Okay, that's the part that's coming in that's saying, I don't like this, I don't want to be there, is another part. It's a protector. Would that protector feel safe enough to go have some tea for a moment?
Yeah. I'll send that protector outside the office. Hang on.
And I want to thank that protector and just let that protector know that I've totally got you and I'm not going to take anxiety to anywhere that they don't need to go. Really high level right here. We're not going to go anywhere we shouldn't go today. Okay. I just want to thank that protector for coming in and just say, have a tea, but thank you so much for speaking up. Thank you. So with a little bit more permission just to talk to this part, what is the anxious part need?
The first thing that came up was a hug, reassurance, that I don't have to do this on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. Does that part of you know that you are here? That your self, that your resourced, undamaged self, does it know that you're here?
I think so. I think so. And the reason why I say it like that is because I think one of the things that I've been struggling with for so long because of workaholism and being busy and on the move as kind of my go-to protector. As long as I'm on the move, I'm going to be okay. As long as I'm busy. I have had a deep feeling of loneliness.
Yeah. So
being in a quiet place up here makes me feel really lonely.
Okay. Thank you for saying that. How do you feel towards the part?
I feel sad towards her, tired of feeling lonely. I get it. It's painful.
So she knows you're here and you have some compassion for her. I don't want to put the words in your mouth, but
yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. If she wasn't in such an extreme role of doing and anxious.
Yeah.
What else would she be doing?
She'd be hanging out with her friends.
Hanging out with her friends. Okay.
A lot. She'd be doing fun shit. I don't know. Going for a hike.
Going for a hike. Okay. Would you be there? Self?
Yeah.
Okay. In your own mind's eye, can you just take a moment to just visualize taking her by the hand and or however it visualizes for you, however it comes to your vision, taking her on that hike, see who's around, see whatever comes up. You can tell me whatever comes up, whatever you want to share.
I can totally see it. Totally. There's a black bear that is out with her cubs up there. And so I just see us walking down the path and there's the black bear.
How does she feel with you on the hike?
Happy that I'm there.
Yeah. And is there anything that you want to say to her on this hike?
I'm not going anywhere.
Can you make a commitment to her right now that when you notice her, you can just take her by the hand and go on the hike and remind her that you're not going anywhere?
Is when you say notice her, are you talking about when that feeling comes back? Is that
Yeah.
what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. When the anxiety starts to come in, can you just let her
Yeah.
know?
I am not going to let you be there alone.
Right. And make a commitment, maybe that you'll just take her on that hike.
I'll just
Maybe even
grab that
literally, maybe even literally go for a hike with her.
Totally. Totally.
Beautiful. How does she feel now? Just to close it out, how does she feel?
Um, I think some of the protectors have come back in.
Okay. That's okay. They're welcome back. They're welcome back, Mel, because
They're like,
not,
and I don't want to go to hike. You know, like
that's okay. That's okay. They're welcome back. I want to thank them for stepping aside for the time that they did. They did a beautiful job. They are welcome back. We can always ask them to step aside when there's some space, but right now it's okay. They can come back. And you now have what you have right now, Mel, is direct access from self to the part. It's so beautiful to witness. You have direct access from your adult resourced internal parent self to the part of you that's so protective and anxious. And you've given her a full media alert that you are available to her when she needs you.
Yeah.
Major step forward.
I want to just unpack that for everybody that's watching this and listening. And that is that here's what I got from it. When you feel the anxiety take over, take a breath, go into your body, locate where it is.
Notice
it. And then you had me visualize the color or the gender or the shape of it.
That's getting to know. What do I know about it? Mm-hmm.
What do I know about it? And then you asked me if I had other experiences where I had felt the same thing. Is that the next thing that happened?
We go into what does it need?
What does it need? What does it need? And I said a hug.
Usually what you'll hear when you ask parts what they need, they'll say, I need to play. I need a hug. I need to be creative. It's always the stuff that we want as a kid. The stuff we didn't get.
You actually write about this in your book with your son. The 4 S's. What are they?
Yeah. So this IFS is broken down in chapter 7, which is called Love Every Part. And then there's another chapter called Reparenting Yourself, where I had this massive aha moment that all the parenting advice that I was getting from Dan Siegel and all the beautiful psychologists out there that do therapy for children was so profound when working and co-creating with my son. And I thought to myself, well, nobody ever did this for me. And instead of being pissed about that, I said, wait a second, I can do that for me. I can give myself that hug. I can use the 4 S's, as Dan says, to be seen, safe, soothed, and secure. I can create that environment for myself internally. That was a big change for me. That was a big turning point.
One of the things that you also introduce is this heart hold. So can you walk everybody through that? Because I think that is a way that you can provide those things to yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And it's actually something I really want to recommend to you right now, because when I was cracking, this hold was something that really, really helped me on a moment to moment basis. So placing your hand on your heart and your other hand on your belly, and just notice which hand is most natural to your heart. For me, it's the right.
Yeah, the right.
You just went right to the right. So it's the right. Some people it's the left. So really have to decide what's right for you. The other hand on the belly, and just take a deep breath in and extend your diaphragm. And on the exhale, just relax your diaphragm and just keep with that belly breath, taking a deep breath in and letting it go. Another deep breath in and let it go. And you might even affirm things to yourself. I'm safe right now. I have so much compassion towards all of my parts. My self energy is here with me. Even just doing the hold is enough right now to settle my system to help me get back into that parasympathetic state to just feel relief.
That's great.
Yeah. Go to it all day.
It's nice on the belly too. Really nice.
Really nice. Another one would be tapping on the gamut point. So there's a point between the ring finger and the middle finger called the gamut point.
Outside of the hand, right?
On the back side of the hand. Yep. And I like to call this point the holy shit point. When I was early in the trauma recovery, I was terrified of getting in an elevator. Why? It's out of control, right?
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The elevator, I was coming out of the trauma and the elevator was just the scariest thing for me. So I had to do this. There was times I had to get in an elevator. And so I was tapping that point.
And what does that do?
This point sends a message to the amygdala that it's safe to relax. When you tap that point, you also want to take the benefit of affirming the desired feeling. I am safe. I am safe. I am safe.
Wow. That's so cool. So how long did that last to be nervous about getting into an elevator?
A few months. I did a lot of EMDR, which I write about in the book, eye movement sensitization and reprocessing.
Yeah.
Really beneficial. Could be great when you're in a crisis. And by the way, offline, I have a person for you.
Oh, I'm already doing it.
Good.
Yes, you're right. It is extremely helpful.
It gives you a settled sense of safety and helps you reprocess even the minor things in the moment. And the stuff that we just did, the body work, that's based on somatic experiencing, which is a body-based trauma therapy. And so as you can see, there's a through line between all the therapies that I chose. And that is, I believe that they're all very therapeutic yet spiritual practices.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I found your book and your work, especially as it's evolved, to be really profound in the spiritual connection to mental health, to healing. And so how would you describe that?
The therapies that I was drawn to, I know my guide spirit, God led me to them because they were going to resonate with me most. And the reason I believe that they have such strong spiritual undertones is IFS, connect to self. So for years, I was teaching A Course in Miracles. We have the ego and we have our higher self, and our higher self can dissolve the ego through the experience of forgiveness. Protector parts, self energy, self can dissolve through compassion, forgiveness, courage, creativity. It's all the same thing, just a different way of accessing it. The EMDR I loved so deeply because it allowed me to work with the subconscious. And to not have to recall big things, but just allow. I fell deeply, madly in love with somatic experiencing because it let my body do the work, which is a very spiritual experience. And it got me out of the storyline and into the body. And I believe that the people who founded, particularly knowing some of them, I think that they're very spiritual people, though they may not be able to admit that in their clinical environments. But there's such a through line. And I also just believe that God gives us what we can handle, but also what we resonate with.
Well, can we connect the dots between what you just said about God giving you not only what you can handle, but what you resonate with, and the fact that you are somebody that people around the world come to for learning how to manifest.
Right.
And talk to me and us, anybody who's watching, about the connection between manifesting and this cracking open, that you are attracting something that you need when you go down this journey.
Well, what I'm really proud of is that my books on manifesting aren't really manifesting light. They're deep books, like Super Attractor, Manifest a Life Beyond Your Wildest Dreams. Okay, I hooked you in, but now I get you to work. And these books, The Universe Has Your Back. These are books on how to manifest, but they're books on how to undo the blocks to the presence of that super attractor power that we all have.
Yes.
And so the more we crack open to. Amma said that, and Amma, the hugging saint, she said that when an eggshell cracks from the outside, it's broken. But when it cracks from the inside, it's reborn. So that cracking is rebirthing into the truth of who you are, the self within you, the super attractor power within you. And the more you release the blocks to the presence of that self energy, the closer you get to becoming just a more aligned human. And when I say aligned human, I mean a human having a human experience with a direct line to higher level consciousness, whether you call that compassion, courage, curiosity.
At the end of the day, it's all that capital S self energy.
That's right.
Is what you're talking about. So,
which is the same as spiritual energy, which is the same as listening to a spirit guide, which is the same as it's the voice of love. It's the undamaged resource soul of who we are.
I think that's the simplest way to say it, that trauma is blocking you from accessing the source of who you are.
Yes.
And that is love.
And let's just call it unresolved trauma is the block, because the trauma, when transcended, can be one of the greatest gifts you've ever received.
How do you deal with the money anxiety that you may be feeling right now? And I have a quote to kick us off. We tend to forget that baby steps still move you forward. And so I'm going to talk about the baby steps. And they all fall inside the context of everything we do on Stay Connected with Mel Robbins. It's reminding you to stay safe and your family to stay safe, to have the proper perspective, to plan based on the facts, to be patient and resilient, and to look for the opportunities to grow. And so the first thing I want to give you when it comes to money anxiety is I want to give you the proper perspective. And I don't mean to be an alarmist. I am not a certified financial advisor. I am not somebody who even really understands the stock market all that well. I leave that to the experts. I am not a banker. I'm not an accountant. You should talk to people in your life if you have people in your life that either help you with financial advice or that you respect as it relates to financial decisions. But I want to give you a proper perspective, the perspective that I'm using, because I'm hoping that you will realize that this is an important moment for you to face your fears and for you to get very proactive. I read an article in The Atlantic yesterday that the stock market has lost 20% of its value in 21 days. And I want to put that in perspective for you so you understand what an unprecedented moment in time this is. That is more and greater of a loss than we experienced in the Great Depression in 1929. It's greater than what we experienced in the first dot-com crash in 1987, and it is 10 times the loss that was experienced in 2007. This is unprecedented. And it's important for you to realize that, because this is not just a moment where you can kind of ignore what's going on. It's a moment where you have to have the proper perspective that, yes, we're going to get through this. But when we get through this and we come out of self-isolation, it's not going to be just stepping back into the same old world. When you think about the impact to some of the industries that are the backbone of this country, whether you're talking about the airline industry or you're talking about the hotel industry and the devastation to those businesses, it's going to take time for things to get back to normal. It's going to take time for people who've had their life savings blown in the stock market crash to start to feel comfortable spending money again. It's going to take time for businesses who have had to furlough or shut down and who have experienced as major losses in terms of the amount of revenue coming in, that there is kind of a domino effect to all of this, which is why I'm sounding the alarm today, not in a hysterical way, but to say there's an opportunity here for you to lessen your money anxiety by not paying attention to everything going on out there, but by turning inward and paying attention to what you need to do to make sure you are safe and you are in control of your financial life. And look, I need to say something loud and clear. This is a collective issue. And if you're scared right now, if you've lost your job, if you're worried about running out of money, you're not alone. 58% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. 58%. So if you're worried about money, if you don't have the savings to see yourself through the end of the summer, you're not alone. You're in the majority, which is why I want to talk about this. In 2007, when we had that huge recession in the United States because the real estate market bottomed out because of all of the fraudulent loan activities of all the big banks, and we hit that major recession, therapists coined a term that they called money anxiety disorder. They saw people who had very destructive attachment issues and behavior issues related to money during that recession. And there were three things that they saw. And I want you to pause for a minute and ask yourself, are you seeing this in yourself or people that you love? Number one, you start hoarding money, right? You like hold on to it so much and you're terrified to spend it. Number two, you become so frugal with what you're doing. Or number three, and this is kind of as weird as it sounds, I think this one's probably the most common, you're overspending. You're sort of in this denial that there's a big problem coming and you spend in order to distract yourself. I did. See the sweatshirt I bought? I love it. But when we went into self-isolation, the first website I went to, Nordstrom's. And what I found to be really weird, because normally I kind of shop out of boredom and I'm one of those people that put things in a cart, but I don't necessarily buy it. One of the things that I saw on the Nordstrom site as I was purchasing this sweatshirt is there were more people looking at the item at the same time than I had ever seen before in my entire life. Nordstrom has this little thing where if you're looking at an item, it says 73 other people viewing it. I had never in my life seen numbers that high. And overspending is a sign that you are anxious about money. Hoarding money, a sign that you're anxious about money. And here's one of the things that we noticed doing the Mel Robbins show. Is that when you get nervous about money, it is incredibly common to stop opening your bills. It's incredibly common to go into a mode where you feel paralyzed by it and overwhelmed by it instead of getting proactive, which is what we all need to do. And there's an even deeper psychological reason why money anxiety triggers you so deeply. It's because money is attached to your fundamental needs. Do you remember something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs in high school? It's this concept that you and I, that human beings, we have basically a triangle of needs. And on the bottom, the part here that I have highlighted in orange, these are your fundamental needs. This basically means if you don't have this shit covered, you're dead. And so when this stuff gets threatened, the fundamental needs, I'm going to explain what they are in just a second, you go into panic mode. Up a little higher, once you got your fundamental needs, you need water, you need sleep, you need shelter, you need oxygen, you need food, you need clothing. Once you have those things, you can then go to the needs of the heart, connection, love, community. And then once you got that handled, you can go up here to personal development, to your soul, to your creativity. The reason why money anxiety is at an all-time high is because money is tied to being able to buy food. Money is tied to being able to have shelter. Money is tied to you feeling psychologically safe. And since it's attached to your fundamental needs, it's going to make you feel even more anxious right now. When you walk into Costco and there's no diapers left, or you walk into the grocery store and there's no toilet paper left, or you start to see the bills coming in, which threatens your ability to pay for your shelter or pay your utilities, you're going to feel more anxiety right now. This is acute. And that's why I want to talk about what you need to do right now. Because if you don't start to take control of the money situation, your anxiety that's tied to your basic needs is going to start to go up, 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 up. And remember the analogy on the plane, if you're the pilot or if you're the steward, I need you to stay calm. I need you to be in control. I need you to know that we are going to land in Chicago and that this turbulence is not going to make the plane crash. But if you start to get completely wackadoodle in your stress about money, you could make your own life crash because you don't take the steps now to put the proper plan in place. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. Okay. We're going to talk about the 5 things I want you to do if you're worried about money. And everybody should be worried about money. Me personally, there are 2 things that Chris and I are doing right now, and they all relate to these 5 steps. The 2 things Chris and I are doing is today, Chris is pulling all of the facts together. What are our outstanding bills? How much money do we have in the bank? What do our savings accounts look like? I haven't even looked because I've been nervous to look based on the stock market. I'm succumbing to it. If you don't have savings, you're not alone. 58% of Americans don't have savings. So I don't, or have less than $1,000 in savings. So this isn't just for people that have savings account. Everybody needs to stop and accept the new normal. What does that mean? In my mind, the new normal means the end of this year. The new normal means that you want to stop and you want to assess if this is going to go on in terms of self-isolation for a couple months, which I think it probably will, and then we come out of it. It's going to take a little bit of time. So I need you to accept the new normal instead of being in denial, because if you don't deal with this today, 2 weeks from now, you're going to have a panic attack when you go to the grocery store because you're not going to have the money to buy the basic essentials that you need. So accept the new normal. You don't have to take my date. You could pick July 1. You could pick September 1. And by the way, I've got good news at the end of this, so stay with me. Number 2, I need you to face your fear and get the facts. This is the most important part. You ready? What does this mean? Face your fears and get the facts. We're all terrified that you're going to run out of money. We're all terrified that you're not going to make it through this pandemic. You are going to make it through it. We're going to make it through it together. I guarantee you we will. You can face the facts, face your fear right now and get the facts. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pull 2 months of your bank statements. Okay. I don't care if you have 0 savings. I'm sure you have a checking account. I'm sure you have to work with a bank in order to manage your money. Pull 2 months of records from your bank online, print them out, and then go through them. And you're going to need 2 things. Get a highlighter and get a pen. Any single thing that is a negative coming out of your bank statement, highlight it. That's all I want you to do. And then I want you to start to make a list of all of the different places that you pay monthly to every single month. I realize I'm being very, very elementary here. When people get afraid, we got to go back to the basics. So print out 2 months of your bank statements, pull out a highlighter, highlight all of the deductions from your account. That's going to tell you where you're spending money, because I bet if you're anything like me, you have no fucking clue where your money is going half the time. You had no idea that you charge that many movies on Netflix. You didn't realize that you were still on auto pay for a gym that you haven't been to for 18 months. So highlight all of the things that are deductions and then make a list of all of those businesses. Okay? Why? The reason why is now we're going to go from being paralyzed to proactive. Okay? Now that you know what your monthly bills look like and you know how much money you have in the bank or not, now you need to go from being paralyzed to proactive. That's step number 3. This is what I'm going to call the toilet paper moment. Remember 3 weeks ago when people told you to get prepared? Remember that? I remember how many people were like, if I get corona, I get corona. It only hurts young people. They're never going to isolate here. Remember those days? Well, I need you to start to listen to the experts. And the experts say that this is going to last many months. And the experts say that the economic fallout from this is going to last quite a while. and the experts say, I don't give a shit what your uncle says on Facebook. Now is a time to listen to the experts. You got it? Good. So it's also a time to go from being paralyzed to proactive. Now that you've highlighted all the deductions and you have listed all the businesses, now it is time to pick up the phone and get proactive. So here's what I want you to do. Anything you don't need, get rid of. If there is a subscription to something that you don't need, get rid of it. If you don't watch cable anymore, get rid of, this is time to cut the cord. If you don't go to the gym, time to cut the cord. If you've got a office at a WeWork or somewhere, time to end the lease. It is time to face reality, everybody. You also need to get onto your smartphone and dig into iTunes or the App Store on your Samsung and figure out what apps are charging you that you didn't even realize. Where do you have in-app purchases that you didn't even realize? Is your kid's Xbox attached to your credit card? Now is the time to take control of this stuff, everybody. If you pay a mortgage, because the federal government has not taken nationwide action, which they freaking need to do, you have to go state by state. So go to your state government website and there will be information there about state by state relief in terms of mortgages. If you are renting, call your landlord if you have lost your job or if you are furloughed or if you are worried, and be in communication. Do not go into hiding. If you're hiding, you're paralyzed. If you're in communication, you're being proactive. For local taxes, you got to go local. Local governments are the ones in charge of your taxes. A lot of colleges, if your kids are home, has started to offer refunds on a prorated basis for room and board, which isn't being used right now. You need to pick up the phone. You need to start sending emails, and you need to get in front of this. Why? Well, because we tend to forget. Let's go to the quote. We tend to forget that baby steps still move you forward. And just like a daily routine gives you predictability, being in action, even if your landlord is a dickhead, even if you don't get the result you want, you are taking proactive steps. And that's what I need you to do.
I want to go back to what we were talking about because this is super important for everybody that just walked in the room to hear. So we were talking about, Heidi had asked a question about imposter syndrome. And so I want to bring you all into this conversation because this is critical for you to hear. It's critical for you to learn these simple tools. That as she's successful, as she's making stuff happen, she has this nagging voice in her head that's like, you don't deserve this. This is going to get taken away. You know, you're an imposter. People are going to find out. Like this nagging thing that is beating her down, even as she's trying to rise up. Can you guys relate to that? Okay, terrific. And so, well, not terrific. I don't want that voice in your head, but I'm glad that you can relate to what we're talking about. So I'm like, we got to go to war with that voice. And I want today to be a line in the sand where you will look back on today and you'll go, okay, there was a before I heard this conversation and there was an after. And so the first thing that I want you to do is I invented something called the 5-second rule, where you count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's a little brain trick where it interrupts all the nastiness and the patterns and old habits here that hold you back. And by the time you count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you awaken this part of your brain. And you are immediately in control of what you think and do next. And one of the best uses for this thing, and you're going to hear me talk about it on the big stage, and I'm going to show you some examples of how people are using this around the world. One of the best uses is to silence the critic in your head, to interrupt that nagging voice. And one of the other things I want you to understand is that your brain is a supercomputer, and your brain loves patterns. And all those little thoughts that you have are just a pattern. And guess what? It's a pattern somebody else taught you. It's a pattern that a caregiver or a parent or a bully or society at large taught you that made you feel less than or unworthy. And it is time to kick that bully out of your freaking head. And the thing that's important about this, and this is like hand-to-hand combat with your own mind, is that if that pattern is not broken and replaced, that pattern will repeat. And for some of us, what I've started to realize in my own life is that I'm just repeating thought patterns that my great-grandmother had and my grandmother had, and then she taught them to my mother, and then my mother said them to me. And I have an opportunity to end that garbage. That I have an opportunity to speak to myself differently.
And so step number one is I need you to recognize that. So how many of you in the back row are tracking with what I'm saying? Give me a hand in the air so I know. Okay, great. Second thing, when you notice, oh, there's that thing again, you're going to count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That is the second part of this. So we're going to notice it, we're going to count backwards to interrupt it. Now we're going to name it, okay? So I want you to close your eyes. I've already asked everybody in the room to close their eyes. Think about that nasty, awful, disgusting, oh, I hate, ugh, you know, kind of thing. You can make it funny, you can make it gross, you could be a real person. And I want you to think of a name that we're going to call this voice. When my son was struggling with anxiety, he called anxiety Oliver. And he made Oliver look like a big old pimply 8th grader who was miserable, right? And whenever the voice would come on, he would go, all right, Oliver, you're not invited to the sleepover. I'm going to go. Oliver, I'm not taking you to school with me today. And there's a lot of science behind this because by naming it and picturing something, whether it's broccoli, somebody in the room said she hates broccoli, so the voice is broccoli, you distance yourself. This is the power of objectivity. So, right here, what's the name of your voice? What is it? Ollie? Ollie. Okay, great. Right here with the pins, cute pins, yes. Maria. Maria's the voice? Okay, Maria, get out of here. White blazer. Tomatoes. Okay, excellent. She hates tomatoes, apparently. And here's the thing. Have any of you ever had a puppy? Okay, great. Have you ever tried to train a puppy on a leash? Right, and the puppy just wanders all over the place? This is another analogy for your mind. Think about your thoughts and your mind like a puppy on a leash. The best way to get a puppy to calm down is to just step on the leash. That's what we're doing. When your mind starts to wander and tomato and broccoli and, you know, Maria and Bob show up, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get out of here, Bob. That's how you're going to step on the leash. You're going to pull your thoughts right back to your own. And then you want to replace it. You want to replace it. And you can replace it in the beginning by just saying, I'm not thinking about that. You're not going to talk to me like that. Okay? Awesome. Because if you allow that voice to stay, it will just continue. And as you get more and more and more successful, you will take that voice with you. And you will never truly reach not only your potential, but you will also not have the fulfillment and happiness that you deserve. And it begins with what you're saying up here. And we all do it. You're not alone. If I were to put a speaker on everybody's head in here and turn up the volume, you wouldn't be sitting here. We'd all be on an inpatient unit somewhere because, you know, like that, the way we talk to ourselves is really awful. Really awful. I agree, right? Yes, exactly. Okay, another question. Thank you for that. Right here.
I'm going through like a little existential crisis, I would say. I'm trying to decide between what I need and what I want.
Oh.
Earlier, like 5 minutes before I came in, I got the job opportunity that I applied for. However, the job that I have now is what I love doing, and that's why I changed my major. But the job that I was just offered and I accepted will help me pay for rent and living more than the job that I have. And it's like, I can take both jobs. So I have 2 jobs now, but it would mean that instead of working 20 hours, I'd be working 38, and I'm a full-time college student. And I don't want to burn myself out, but at the same time, I don't want to not pursue what I have now because I need to make ends meet living-wise.
Yeah. Okay, it's an excellent question. How many of you can relate to this? Yeah, the conflict between what your heart longs for versus like what is the responsible thing to do. So I'm going to give you a couple tools to think about decision-making, everybody. Okay? Because sometimes you just have to do whatever you need to do to make the ends meet, right? Sometimes that's what you have to do, but not always. Not always. I don't think we live in I don't think we live in a rigid world. I think we relate to the world like it is. And so one of the tools I use a lot is I try to switch myself from an either or mentality into an and mentality. So how could I take that job that is going to help me pay my bills and help me feel secure and help me feel like I am making all these ends meet, because there is a level of stress that you feel that is so distracting and devastating when you cannot pay your bills. And I know that stress because just 14 years ago, my husband and I were $800,000 in debt. His restaurant business had gone under. I was unemployed. We were about to lose the house. I could not pay for groceries. We had to pull our kids from that town soccer program because we couldn't afford it. And the stress was so excruciating that I literally couldn't get out of bed. In fact, that's how I invented the 5-second rule. I would lay in bed every morning and the anxiety was like a gravity blanket. And I would stare at the ceiling and my mind would just spiral. It's like I did not know to step on the leash. I did not know what to do. And so this whole 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 came during a rock bottom moment. Like I knew I needed to get out of bed. I just didn't know how. And so the counting became the how. And so what I want you to do, though, is I want you to think, is there a way to do both? Could you accept the job so that you have, or you've already accepted it, but could you accept that job and be happy about it and empowered and go back to what you're doing now and say, can I do this but only X number of hours? So that you still have a foot in something that fills your soul versus going, it can only be this or that. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So have that conversation because then you keep a door open to something. The second thing I would do, and this is really important, everybody. So I partnered with LinkedIn and we've launched this course all about confidence. So we can talk a little bit about confidence, what it is, what it isn't, how to build it. And the other thing that I did with them is I was the host of this big thing they called the Future of Work. And one of the things that I heard loud and clear is that the most important thing that you can invest in any job that you have is skills. So if you're going to go into a technical job, like you're going to be a chemist or you're going to be in pharma or you're going to be a doctor or you're going to be an engineer, there's a certain level of expertise that you need in order to do that job. But the vast majority of jobs, of businesses you might start, of all the things that you might do are all about skills. Can you speak in public? Can you present your ideas? Can you write something? Can you sell somebody on an idea? Like skills, can you connect with people? Are you inspiring and uplifting with people? Skills that you can learn on any job. And so the second piece of advice I'm going to give you is this. I want you to think about what is it about the job that you have now that really fills your soul?
The opportunities it gave me, like the job I have now is how I got here with the Cauldron on the Rise, and it's opened so many doors for me.
And it feels like I can almost feel you getting emotional as you think about it.
Yeah, it's what made me change my major. I was a political science major, and then I got the programming job that I have now with SGA as a public relations officer.
Amazing.
And now I switched my major to communications with a concentration in sports business management because I love planning events and stuff.
Amazing.
And that's why, even though it's fun and it doesn't pay the bills, it doesn't, but it's fun and it makes me happy and it alleviates the stress of having to make ends meet. The other job, which is not as fun, will make ends meet.
Yep.
And the stress of not having to worry about rent every month, especially the way the housing is working.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, what do I have to do? It's like.
Well, what I'm telling you is I think you can figure out a way to do both without working that many hours. And I also think if you love the event planning and you love the communication, here's a great tip, everybody. Look for opportunities inside whatever you're doing now to do more of what you love. So every job, even if it's boring as you know what, they need help with social media marketing. They probably have some sort of something going on, whether it's an employee gathering that you can raise your hand for and help out so that you bring some of the stuff that you love into the day-to-day of what you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. And here's the final thing. I believe that when you are born, you are hardwired with an inner compass. It's like your own Google Maps or Waze system. And I'm going to prove it to you, okay? So have you ever thought about the odds of you actually being born? Because here's the thing, believe it or not, a bunch of scientists calculated the odds. What are the odds with, I know this is kind of gross, but all the sperm that your dad has, who wants to think about that? And eggs that your mom has, and the number of times that they fooled around and all that stuff, you know what I'm saying? What are the odds of that one sperm and that one egg coming together and actually creating you? 1 in 400 trillion. 1 in 400 trillion. And here's some really interesting research. We now know that it wasn't about how fast that thing swam. We know that it was the egg. The egg was choosy. And guess what? The egg chose you. Absolutely. Absolutely. You are here for a reason. And I want you to embrace that you are here for a reason. And when you are born into this world, all of that magic that makes you a miracle gets hardwired into your DNA. And it is part of the wiring in your body. And your body is a system of signals that are trying to get you to turn in the direction that's meant for you. And so you were talking about needs, right? There are signals in your body that signal your need. So, for example, you got to eat or else you're going to die. So what is the signal that you feel? What do you feel when you need food?
Hungry.
Correct. What do you feel when you need sleep?
Tired.
Yeah. What do you feel when you need connection with other human beings? Yes. What do you feel when you need some water? Exactly. Exactly. And here's something that's really interesting. Feeling stuck and feeling lost are also signals. When you feel stuck and you feel lost in your life, it means you've stopped growing. You are going to grow for your entire life. Until the day you die, your brain can learn new patterns. And so I want you to understand that your body is always trying to signal you. Before you label yourself as someone who has social anxiety, have you ever considered maybe you're just bad at small talk and you hate being fake at big gatherings? Is it possible? I mean, it does make you stop and wonder. We've all had that feeling on a Friday night or late on a Saturday where you've made plans and then all of a sudden, as it gets closer and closer to you needing to get off the couch or to head home from whatever it was that you were doing and get dressed and get ready to go out again, you start to feel this heaviness and this dread in your body, right? You've had that feeling before. You're like, ugh, do I have to go to that birthday party? Ugh. Do I really want to go to that fundraiser or out to the bar tonight? Oh, why did I say yes to this? Well, before you start to label yourself as somebody who has anxiety, social anxiety, right? I want you to stop and consider the difference between social anxiety and just actually not liking big parties. Seriously. I'm going to teach you the difference in this video. So if you're struggling with a form of social anxiety, all of that behavior that you feel, that dread that you feel, right? That heaviness that hits you right before you're about to go out, if it's social anxiety, all of that heaviness and that dread, it is literally triggered by the fear of doing it. You start to think about what's going to go wrong. You're scared that something is going to go wrong. You start to get nervous about what's going to happen, right? It's this feeling of intense dread. That's kind of the feeling of what it's like to have anxiety about social situations. And here's the irony of the thing. You may actually want to go to that birthday party. You may actually want to go to the concert. You may want to go out to the bar tonight to your friends, but you feel this dread kick in as you think about doing it, okay? That's anxiety caused by social situations. The other thing that I mentioned is maybe you just hate small talk, right? Maybe you hate being fake. That's me. And that's not a feeling of dread. The avoidance that you're feeling, this resistance to going, is due to dislike, not dread, dislike. Big difference between anxiety caused by social settings and simply being somebody like me. I hate small talk. I hate pretending that I'm interested when I'm not that interested. I hate big group settings. I'm really more of the kind of one-on-one, small group, deeper, more intimate conversations kind of gal. And so before big parties, I just kind of get this like, ugh, do I really want to do this? Because I'm not the kind of person that likes what's required to go to a big networking event. So here's a surprising fact. You may feel the dread, the fear, the kind of anxious feelings that come with a big social situation, but you may still want to go. And that's how you also know that this is probably more in the lane of fear and dread and anxiety than it is just disliking small talk. You know, if you're thinking about like, I'm going to embarrass myself, or what if this happens, or what if that happens, or what if I have to go to the bathroom, or what if my face turns red, or what if this, or what if that, or what if I see that person, that's more dread. That's more fear, and that's more in the lane of anxiety. So the next time you're in a situation, I'm going to give you some questions in order for you to help yourself flush this out a little bit more, okay? Before you're like, oh, for sure, Mel Robbins, it's fear, it's dread, it's definitely a form of some sort of anxiety that I'm feeling. Just take a minute for a second and ask yourself this. Is the reluctance and the resistance that you feel, is it just a sign that you prefer to be home? Not because home feels safe, but because you just like being home by yourself better. That's number one. The next thing that you should ask yourself is, does the nervousness or the dread or the resistance that you feel just mean that you're the kind of person that likes deeper conversations? You prefer to be around 2 or 3 people. You're not the kind of person that loved being at fraternity parties when you were younger, or loved the big social scene, that it just is sort of like, ugh, I could do without that. Like, I'm going to be happier if I never do one of those things again. Or is the nervousness and resistance more because you're afraid something bad's going to happen? See, if it's something bad's going to happen, that's more in the lane of dread, right? If it's more in just like, I just kind of have a preference here. It's not that I think something bad's going to happen. I just prefer something else, which is where the resistance come from. Here's another question that you can ask yourself. Are you nervous because you're going to see people from your past, or see people that you think judge you, or because you're going to be put in a situation where you feel like you're going to have to explain yourself? Now, it may surprise you to know that I'm somebody who feels all of these things. I just prefer to stay home. You know, I bitch all the time that I don't have a great social life, but the truth is I kind of prefer to stay home. I feel like I'm missing out when I see everybody at these big parties, but then I think, well, actually, I don't really have fun at those things. You know, I was just with my best friend from childhood this weekend on a business trip. We often meet up and see one another while we're on the road working. And she said to me, she said, you know, Mel, a lot of people don't know this about you, but you're actually kind of a shy person. You know, I know that you have this big persona and you can get on a stage and you seem to be very outgoing and energized by talking to people. But the truth is, the Mel Robbins that most people don't know, you're like a shy person. You kind of stick to yourself. You've had the same friends for a very long time. You're not somebody that's ever out and about and at lots of different parties. You kind of keep your circle tight. And so I'm telling you this because I think that oftentimes if you're extroverted in your work or extroverted in some aspects of your life, you put pressure on yourself to be extroverted everywhere. The truth is, even though I'm very extroverted in my work, I'm a homebody at heart. And, you know, my husband is very introverted. And that just means, by the way, if you're introverted, that you get your energy drained when you're around people. I tend to have my energy amplified when I'm working and I'm around people. But the second I'm done working, I just want to go home and sit on the couch, if you know what I mean. And so whenever Chris and I, Chris being the introvert, me being sort of extroverted, but I really, you know, kind of prefer small gatherings. Whenever we get invited anywhere, we're both so excited to see people that we like. But if it's a party that's bigger than like 3 or 4 couples, I always feel this resistance to going. And it's not because I'm nervous, and it's not because I think something's going to go wrong, and it's not because I'm running through scenarios in my head. That would be an indication of some anxious feeling about social gatherings. I just have this kind of weird resistance because I know I would prefer to be at a smaller gathering. That's it. It's a preference because I can't stand small talk. And I can't stand pretending to be interested when I'm really not that interested. And so I prefer deep conversations with just a handful of people. And don't get me wrong, I mean, every once in a while, every one of us needs a massive blowout with a DJ and a dance party and an all-out, just amazing time with a big group of people. But just the small talk thing, not my thing. So if you're sitting there going, you know, Mel, as you're talking about this, and I'm thinking about what I feel as I'm pulling up to a big party, it's not a preference. It's really about dread.
It's not that I favor smaller group, it's that I'm actually afraid of larger social situations. And typically what happens when you're dealing with anxiety that stems from a fear of social situations is the fear is triggered by this opinion that something bad's going to happen, that you're going to face some sort of rejection, that people are going to judge you. And if this is the case, you are dealing with something that you really should get some help with, because you may actually want to join the crowd, but it's your nerves and it's your fear of rejection and judgment that keeps you from doing it. And so here are some quick signs that this is you. Number one, you feel anxious because you think something embarrassing is going to happen. Or maybe in the past, you had something embarrassing happen. And so it's sort of you relive it over and over and over again in your mind as you're about to step into another situation that's similar. When you are at a party, you avoid talking to people that you don't know or have never met or don't know well. Another thing that you might find is that you start to fixate and worry about things that we all do, like forgetting somebody's name or sneezing in the middle of a class, or everybody suddenly turning and looking at you and you forgetting what you were going to say and then your face turning bright red. Maybe you are worried because you're worried about going to the bathroom while you're at this big party, because you have nerves about having to go to the bathroom in public. That's actually pretty common. Maybe you find that you're at these parties, but you're fidgeting and your leg is shaking, or that you're constantly looking at your phone. You're constantly gripping your phone. Instead of being at the party, you are managing your fear about what's going to happen or something bad happening by burying yourself in your phone and texting people who aren't there. Or finally, you are fixated on the idea that everybody is thinking about you and that you assume that people don't like you. If these are starting to be like, God, that's me. Every time I do go to the bar, I'm assuming people are judging me. Wow, when I get invited to a birthday party, I have this weird feeling that they actually didn't want me there. This isn't you disliking something. This is dread and fear that falls into the zone of anxiety around social settings. So, what do you do? Rule number one, understanding it is super important. So rule number one is you just gotta name it. And I don't want you to say, I'm anxious, I have social anxiety. I want you to say, I'm feeling anxious whenever I'm in a social setting. Because you are not your thoughts and feelings. And when you name what you're feeling, and you say, I'm feeling anxious whenever I step into a social setting, something really cool happens. And this is a study that was in the Upward Spiral. And what they found is that when you put your feelings into words, namely you start saying, I feel this nerves and this fear and this anxiousness in a social setting, rather than going, I'm anxious, and labeling yourself. When you put your feelings into words, something really interesting happened. So they did this study where they had people take a look at photographs of folks that were having really emotional facial expressions. And what happens is if you look at a photograph of somebody who's like, well, your amygdala in your brain immediately activated and read the emotions in the picture. But as soon as you're asked to name the emotion you're seeing, oh, I see anger, the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex turns on and it reduces the emotional amygdala reactivity. In other words, by consciously recognizing and naming the emotions, this is so cool. When you name the emotion, I'm feeling afraid, nervous, or anxious about this thing, naming it reduces the impact internally that you feel from that emotion. Pretty cool, huh? So number one, you are going to name what you're feeling instead of labeling yourself with it. The second thing that you can do is you can tap into cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. And that just involves making changes to the way that you think and feel about a situation. So what you're going to do is you're going to identify patterns of thinking that cause you to want to avoid social interaction. So for example, if you tell yourself nobody wanted me here anyway, and then you fixate on it,
Or another example might be that the last time you went to a party, your dress ripped and it was really embarrassing. And now you think about it every time you go to a party. When you identify the pattern of thinking that makes you then feel bad, what you can do is you can then adopt more positive self-talk to encourage and coach yourself through that fear. The third thing that you can do, you're going to hate this, but it's called situational exposure. Just gradually reintroduce yourself to those situations that make you feel nervous, afraid, or anxious. And, if you fear large groups, for example, just start by going out with a friend one-on-one, and then work your way up again to a smaller group of friends, and so on. And by the way, therapists are super awesome in terms of helping you with situational exposure experiments and methods. Another thing that you can do is you can ask people for help. Just tell people what you're dealing with and ask somebody to give you some extra support. Key to the support in helping an anxious person become more independent over time is you not relying on them all the time. So for example, invite your friends to go with you to things. But you've also got to realize that you are going to need to start to come out of your shell. So for example, if you want to help a friend that is really anxious, invite them to do things. And when you're out at the bar, or you are out at a networking event, or you are out doing something fun, bring them into the conversation, ask them questions to help them come out of their shell. Another thing that you can do if you're socially, you get nervous in those kind of situations, is as you feel yourself getting nervous, just do the 5 senses technique, where you feel the nerves or the fear or the anxiousness rising up. Take a deep breath and then ground yourself in the present moment. What do you see? Look around. I see the camera on this desktop computer. What do you smell? I can almost smell that it's cool right now. What do you hear? I hear kind of the buzzing of the light bulbs in this room that I'm shooting in. What do you feel? Oh, I feel my cat, Mr. Noodle, and his awesome fur. What do you taste? My mouth is kind of dry right now. I literally just brought myself into the present moment with you. And you do it by taking a deep breath and then noticing what all 5 senses are feeling. And finally, you got to be kind to yourself as you're doing this. If you're trying to lower the nerves and the fear and the dread that comes with social settings, it's not going to go away overnight. It is going to take consistent effort on your part. Because the truth is, at this moment in your life, for whatever reason, any big social situation makes you feel a little nervous. That's okay. Happens to a lot of people, but you do want to attack this head on. Because the more you isolate and the more you avoid the things that you're afraid, the bigger the fear is going to get. And so, number 1, analyze what situations trigger this. Number 2, break it down. How can you think about it differently? How can you change the situation next time? Ask for a friend to support you. And remember that generally, people are way more focused on themselves than they are focused on you. And they're not scrutinizing your behavior half as much as you think they are. In fact, they're probably not scrutinizing it at all. You're so busy in your head scrutinizing yourself. Everybody else is basically doing the same thing with themselves. And so I want you to understand that with consistent effort, with a little bit of a commitment from you, with some help from some friends and perhaps even a therapist, step by step, you can name this fear, you can face this fear, and through the actions that you're taking, this dread will start to disappear, and you may just start to love those big social things that you've been avoiding. All right. Do you ever catch my anxiety when I get anxious?
No.
I think you get annoyed.
At least not in the moment.
How is it that you don't catch it? Because I catch our daughter Kendall's anxiety, or our daughter Sawyer or our son's anxiety. But you seem to be able to insulate yourself from other people's anxiety.
Well, I mean, it's a good question because I do sometimes find myself catching our kids' anxiety, but I don't catch yours. And maybe that's just because of the amount of time that we've had together and the moments, frequent moments often, where I've been the one sitting there with you and trying to extract your anxiety, because that's really the technique that has always been so effective with you.
Can you explain that? Break down what you do. If I start getting anxious, like I did on Sunday, or I have throughout our 24-year marriage, what do you do? Because you have this superpower of being able to remain calm. And the thing that I find the most validating is, even though you don't feel anxious, you are able to validate my reality of being anxious, even though you're not in the same reality.
I mean, without giving it too much thought, I think some of it has to do with the fact that, first of all, touch is huge, right?
What do you mean touch?
Meaning being able to hold your hand or being close and upfront and personal to what you're experiencing, and just pulling what you're feeling out of your mouth. Like that act of inviting you to describe what's going on, to give detail to it, and to almost not let up, to keep like pulling a thread, like what else is going on? What else is there? What else are you feeling? And I think maybe part of the reason why I don't get triggered by it in that moment is because I've seen it work so effectively that once you get it all out,
it's like barfing.
It dissipates. So it's almost as though the calming nature of the question set and extracting that from your brain or from your heart or wherever you're feeling it, I know, or I have a high degree of confidence that it will calm down. It may not just extinguish itself, but it will go away.
So can we break this down for people? Because I'm not very good at that.
I didn't watch your video the other day, so I wondered what you did to actually calm yourself.
I journaled, I talked to you. I then texted my 3 closest friends, Mindy and Lisa and Gretchen. And then I went for a really long walk, which stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system and calms you down. But so technique number 1 is to give somebody a hug or hold their hand, center them with physical touch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sit up close in front of them. Make sure that you have the as much eye contact as you can have physically with that person.
Okay. I'm realizing that you do this consciously. It's a sneaky guy.
It's been a few years.
And then the second thing you do is give people the questions that you might start asking the person in your life that's feeling anxious.
Well, I would start with, tell me about your anxiety right now. What are you feeling? What's happening? Not only physically in your body, but of course emotionally. I mean, those are the 2 main pillars.
And then you keep going, and anything else. And he does that over until I'm literally like the tank is completely empty. You know what else I've noticed, and I think this is a really important thing, is that you don't respond to what comes out of my mouth.
No answers. You cannot provide any direction or guidance or go for the solve.
Why?
Because there is no solve, particularly when you're in the acute moment. There is nothing is going to resolve that right there and then, even if you have the most best, idea ever, which is super tough for guys in particular, I think, because we're so programmed to go for the solve rather than just be with it.
Here's what I just realized at the biggest possible level about why what you do with me when I feel anxious is so genius. Well, anxiety is all about uncertainty, and typically it's about what you're afraid of in the future that's coming that you can't control. And by getting close to somebody physically, even if it's over a video call and you lean in, but you always sit very close to me, or you give me a huge hug when I'm feeling anxious, or you hold my hand, you're grounding me with physical touch back in this moment. And then the questions of extracting it get me to a point where I'm empty and no longer spinning, and I'm right back in this moment when I have nothing left to say. And because you don't either try to discount or solve or invalidate anything that comes out of my mouth, you just get it out, I'm able to get it all out. Because the second you would say, well, you don't have to worry about that, or this, that, and the other, somebody that's having anxiety will start to argue back, which then takes you back into the future fear.
Yeah, then you're jumping into a conversation, which is the last thing that the person who's suffering the anxiety wants to be having.
Since you've done this with me 100 times, and we have kids that have some anxiety, what is it that you've observed when you get somebody back to zero and in the moment? What do you observe in the person?
I don't know. I've never really thought about that. I think what I observe is what you just said, which is people coming back to right now, and how that is in and of itself is such a powerful grounding mechanism because you're when you're right here, you're out of your head. You're not thinking about yesterday or tomorrow or wherever the source of that anxiety may be coming from. You're present to your physical space and surroundings, and that, I think, I know it has a profound effect on calming it, not necessarily extinguishing it, but certainly calming it.
I think that's your superpower. I really do. You are the most grounded, calm person in my life. And I wonder if it's the years of having a meditation practice and being a practicing Buddhist that has trained that skill in you.
I think so. I mean, I've never sat down to think about where it comes from necessarily, but yes, in Buddhist tradition or practices, completely just being in observance and the act of deep listening, not just, opening your ears, but really listening for what is being said is totally, that's right up a Buddhist alley for sure.
Wow. Now I know why our kids like you more. I'm more fun, but you're the one that grounds us all. You have a question that I think the entire planet can relate to right now.
Yeah.
Which is difficulty focusing. So why don't you tell me first a little bit about your situation and the details around it and what you're noticing about your ADD and ADHD, okay?
Yeah, well, I was diagnosed at 28, and so I've been kind of working with my own symptoms for years now. I'm 38 on Thursday, actually.
Happy birthday.
Thank
Everybody
you.
give some thumbs up and some hearts to Angie. She's celebrating a birthday in quarantine. Here we go.
Yeah.
And your present is a coaching session with Mel Robbins.
That's exactly what I was going to say. This is the best birthday present. But then upon having kids, I have an almost 6-year-old and an 18-month-old, kind of taking on those responsibilities on top of your own ADHD. And then all of a sudden we started seeing symptoms in our almost 6-year-old around 3.5 of having ADHD. Like I would look at him and see, oh my gosh, that was me when I was his age. And it was just kind of building, and we had reached out to some doctors over.
Let me ask you a question real quick.
Yeah.
So first of all, you get diagnosed with ADHD when you're 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
What did you feel when you got that diagnosis?
Relief.
Okay. And how does ADHD present itself for you? Because what most of you don't realize is that ADHD in women and girls is very different than ADHD in men and boys. And that women are profoundly underdiagnosed. I was not diagnosed with ADD until I was 45 years old. And it was liberating to find out I wasn't crazy. I wasn't losing my mind. It wasn't premenopause. It was an attention and focus issue. And one of the things I want everybody to understand is, first of all, we're going to have a general conversation about focus, because whether you clinically have a diagnosis of ADD or ADHD, everybody is having trouble focusing right now. Mm-hmm. Every time, Angie, I walk through our kitchen and one of our daughters are down there. They're 21 and 19. They're both taking classes online because their colleges obviously got shut down. Every one of them is complaining to their friends, I've been upstairs all day. I haven't got anything done.
Yeah.
I'm sitting at my desk all day. I can't I can't concentrate. I can't focus.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell am I doing all day? What is going on? And so the first thing I want to say to you, Angie, is that this is not a normal situation.
Mm-hmm.
And a normal response to an abnormal situation is to lose your focus and to feel anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want to know is, how is being in quarantine impacting your ability to focus?
It's as if it's just compounded and amplified with my husband working from home upstairs, having to figure out our schedules between, okay, who's going to do the schooling and who's going to be working at that time, or if the only little break we get to go one-on-one with our 6-year-old is when the 18-month-old takes a nap.
Okay, so let me just get the facts straight. You got your husband who's working full-time. Mm-hmm. You've got a 5-year-old that has some issues with ADHD. You've got an 18-month-old. Mm-hmm. You have a home-based business, correct? Mm-hmm. And is there anybody else in the house?
No. And I should add, our 18-month-old he's in the immunocompromised category because he was born 7 weeks premature. So he was in the NICU for a month, and actually last September and October, he went to daycare like 6 times and had to be hospitalized twice with RSV and respiratory issues.
Okay. So how is your 18-month-old doing today?
He's perfectly fine. He's on an inhaler twice a day, just as like protocol for his issues last fall. But it's also, that's part of the added fear for us is not only, are we in this situation, but we do have one of the people who is an immunocompromised member of our family. So we have to keep the grandparents away.
Smart.
And all of that. So it just feels
let
really
me ask you a question. Given that you are quarantined, your husband's got to work full time, you got a home-based business, you got 2 kids under 5, one of whom has a compromised immune system, so you got to be hyper vigilant. Mm-hmm. Describe for me how this situation has triggered your inability to focus and heightened your anxiety.
Well, yeah. And I really don't think I've had anxiety before now, really. I don't.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't really suffer. Like, I was misdiagnosed with depression earlier on before I was properly diagnosed with ADHD. But I didn't really have anxiety before now. But yeah, this is, I mean, it's a whole different level of all of the fears. You know,
What are
you're worried.
you afraid of? Describe them all for me.
I'm-
Let's start hearing the list. And if you can relate to this as you're watching me coach Angie, give us a thumbs up, or you can participate in this coaching by telling me in the comments, what are you afraid of? So describe kind of where your mind goes. What do you think about? What's the worst stuff you think about? What do you get anxious about, Angie?
I think the thing I think of is we barely left the house, but my husband does have to go get groceries, and he actually suffers from anxiety, so he's actually wonderful about cleaning off all the groceries and making sure everything is clean before he brings it in the house. I mean, we've had a couple packages, things that we've had to order online that we've had shipped, we leave outside. So it's that fear of something just by chance getting in and making him sick, and not being sure where it's coming from.
And where do you feel the anxiety when your thoughts start to spiral? Where do you feel it in your body?
In my chest. Yeah,
Okay.
I feel like just this weight, like I can't breathe, and it just feels overwhelming.
And what do you do when your chest starts to get really tight and your thoughts become very overwhelming?
I just start talking. I just talk. I just tell my husband how I'm feeling, or I just say, I got to get this out because, and anybody that knows me knows that's true. I just start, okay, I got to get this out or else it's going to crush me. And internalizing it has only, proven to build the anxiety worse. So I've always been a talker, but like, I got to get it out. I have to tell you how I feel, even if I just have to say it, so you can tell me that my fears are maybe a little out of whack, or, hey, this is what we're going to do to make sure that this doesn't happen. We're going to make sure that we have the groceries outside.
Right.
We're going to keep all the cardboard boxes outside, even what little risk that may be. We're gonna take all the precautions. I mean, I think my husband, he went to the grocery store yesterday and he's like, I'm getting everything for 2 weeks. And he was gone for like 3.5 hours because he was just being so careful with everything. And it's just that thing that you don't want to drop the ball and feel like you're safe for a second in the risk of something happening to him.
And how exhausted are you?
Oh, it's completely exhausting. Like, I feel, I mean, I do get a little more sleep once we do all those things. Once I do talk it out, I feel like I'm able to actually sleep a little bit better. But yeah, it definitely, it pops up, and you just wake up and you think about, the worst case scenario happening. But I try
it's right there. The anxiety is right there with you as well when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah. And I mean, if we're all home and no one goes anywhere, and it's fine. You know what I mean? It doesn't really present itself, but it's the, walking outside and going on a walk and, telling our 5-year-old, like, you can't run over to, that friend.
Okay. So I want to handle this one thing at a time. So let's talk about the anxiety first. Okay.
Okay.
So it would be weird if you weren't feeling anxiety right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because feeling anxious, feeling afraid, feeling overwhelmed in a moment like this is a normal response.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times what happens when you start feeling anxiety is the anxiety itself becomes so overwhelming that you start to resist it and you make it wrong, and you start to fear the anxiety, and resisting it makes it even worse. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so talking it out is one strategy. But the thing about that is your 5-year-old will absorb that energy from you.
Yeah.
And so your 5-year-old won't remember the specifics of this period of time, but your 5-year-old will remember how it felt to be around mommy.
And so one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to use this as an opportunity to start to train your mind to not go there. Okay. Because your husband's already being hyper vigilant. And what's happening is you're allowing your anxious thoughts to spin. And when you are talking them out, you're getting them out of your mind, but you are still giving them weight by now spreading all of this anxiety to your husband. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's a strategy that I want you to use. I want you to start to use this as a chance to catch your mind when you start to go into hypervigilance, which is a form of anxiety that a lot of people are feeling right now. Your safety and your family's safety is the paramount importance here. And you can bet on the fact that your husband, if he goes out every 2 weeks, is going to be doing the grocery shopping and being vigilant. And you can stand there with your spray bottle and spray him down with, your homemade sanitizer. But what you want to do is not allow your mind to go there. So there's two things I want there. Actually, I'm going to give you three tools I want you to use. I know you already know the 5-second rule. So when your mind starts to drift to, what are we going to do? What's your 18 months old name?
Otis.
What happens if Otis gets us? What happens if Otis has to go into the hospital? What happens if there's something on the milk carton and then it touches me and then I touch him and then Otis gets sick and then I'll never forgive myself and then we get there and there's no ventilator and then he's in the NICU and that is the moment that we got to stop down. So the moment you catch your thoughts going from one thought, did he wipe down the milk? Which is how it begins. And it starts going to the next one, because if he didn't, you're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
And we're going to stop it down because we're not going to allow ourselves to get hysterical.
Yeah.
You are allowed to ask him, is everything cleaned off? Do you need me to wipe anything? You're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
But you're not allowed to have your mind go nuts. Okay. Yeah. Super important. So that's number one. Number two, when you start feeling yourself stepping up the anxiety, you are really cleaning everything like crazy, or you're feeling that chest pressure come on. When that steps up, I want you to step out of the room for a minute.
Okay.
I want you to take control by removing yourself from the thing you're hyper focused on. Like, is there something that you do when you get anxious? You clean, you organize what do you do?
Yeah, I clean.
Okay.
You organize, do laundry, something.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you catch yourself doing anxiety chores, I want you to step away. I want you to step out, and I want you to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not going to allow myself to get worked up about this. Here's the final thing that I think will help a lot. Telling yourself that nothing bad is going to happen does not work.
Exactly.
And the reason why it doesn't work is because when you say nothing bad is going to happen, it invalidates your fear. The best way to disappear fear that is supported by facts, because we all do need to protect our family's safety, and we all do need to be vigilant in terms of washing hands and cleaning stuff when we get it from the grocery store. So the fear is valid, but I don't want the fear to hijack you. So what you're going to say is, when you feel the chest tightening, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're going to say, if something happens, we'll deal with it then.
Yeah.
Today, we're all safe. So can you say that with me? If something happens, here we go. If something happens, we'll deal with it then.
We will deal with it when it comes, and we will all be safe.
Yes. And what does saying that do for you?
It just gives me the control back, which I think is like everybody feels like this is all out of our control. So if I'm saying that, then I take it back, and then the anxiety won't control me.
Yes, because as weird as it sounds, anxiety is a coping mechanism. Because when you can't control all the craziness that's going on out there, you start to feel anxiety and you start to get nervous and your thoughts start to spiral. And whatever it is that you do, talking it out or folding laundry or focusing on your chest tightening, all of that worrying distracts you from the thing you can't control. And then it makes you focus on anxiety and getting control of anxiety. And so we don't want anxiety to be the thing that's controlling you. Using that mantra, hey, if something happens, we'll deal with it then, and we will all be safe. And today, everybody is great. Today, we're doing our part. And the today part's really important because it brings you back into the present. Anxiety is trying to hijack you and pull you into a scary future. Hey, no, if something happens, we'll deal with it then. Today, we're all safe, and there's nothing that I need to concern myself with. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.